They called her barren, cursed, worthless. Elira Voss knelt in the throne room, gray silk pooling around her like ash, while 3,000 voices demanded her removal. The Alpha King's mate, stripped of her title, her dignity, her future. Her stepsister stood ready to take everything. But when the ceremony began, King Ronan Kael did something no one expected. He rejected the new bride and reached for the woman they'd thrown away. This is the story of the queen they tried to erase and the kingdom she tore apart to save the man she loved. Stay until the end. Like and comment what city you're watching from. The throne room smelled of incense and judgment. Elira kept her eyes on the stone floor, counting the cracks in the marble, while 3,000 people stared at her back. Her knees ached. The gray ceremonial dress they'd forced her into was too tight at the ribs, too loose everywhere else, like it had been made for someone who mattered and then hastily altered for someone who didn't. Let the record show, Chancellor Draven's voice rang out, sharp and satisfied, that Elira Voss, former consort to His Majesty King Ronan Kael, has been examined by the royal physicians and found deficient. Deficient. Not barren, not even cursed, though everyone whispered it. Just deficient, like a crop that wouldn't grow, like something broken that should be discarded. She felt Ronan's eyes on her from the throne, but she didn't look up. Couldn't. If she met his gaze now, she'd shatter, and she'd already promised herself she wouldn't give them that satisfaction. 3 years, Draven continued, pacing before the assembled court, like a prosecutor who'd already won his case. 3 years of union, and not a single heir, not even a failed pregnancy. Nothing. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elira recognized voices. Lady Carith, who'd once invited her to tea and now pretended not to know her name. Lord Benson, who'd bowed so low when she first arrived at court and now wouldn't meet her eyes. The world was full of people who loved you when you were useful and forgot you the moment you weren't. The kingdom requires an heir, Draven said. The bloodline must continue, and so, with great regret, we have come to this decision. Great regret. He sounded about as regretful as a wolf cornering a lamb. Elira Voss, he turned to her fully now, his face a mask of false sympathy. Do you understand why you're here? She lifted her head slowly. Yes, Chancellor. And do you accept the findings of the royal physicians? Her throat tightened. The physicians had been thorough, humiliatingly so. Weeks of examinations, tests, questions whispered behind closed doors, while servants listened at keyholes and turned her most private moments into court gossip. They'd found nothing wrong, which somehow made everything worse. If there had been a reason, an explanation, maybe people would have pitied her. But there was just nothing. A void where a future should have been. I accept them, she said quietly. And do you, of your own free will, relinquish your claim as consort to the king so that another may take your place and provide the kingdom with the heir it desperately needs. This was the moment, the words that would end everything. She'd practiced them in her room last night, standing before the mirror in the dark. Tested different tones, dignified, broken, defiant. None of them felt right. None of them felt like anything except failure. I do, she said. The crowd erupted. Not in protest, in relief, like they'd all been holding their breath, waiting for her to make it easy for them, waiting for her to step aside quietly so they could pretend this was mercy instead of execution. Draven smiled. Then let it be recorded. Elira Voss is hereby released from her bond to No. The word cut through the noise like a blade through silk. Every head turned toward the throne. King Ronan Kael stood slowly, and even from across the room, Elira could see the tremor in his hands. He gripped the armrest of the throne too tightly, his knuckles white against the dark wood. He looked wrong. Thinner than he'd been a month ago, paler. The kind of pale that came from sickness, not just lack of sleep. Your Majesty. Draven's smile faltered. The proceedings are nearly... I said no. Ronan's voice was rough, like gravel scraping stone. The ceremony does not continue. Silence crashed over the room. Elira's heart hammered against her ribs. What was he doing? Draven recovered quickly, his expression shifting to carefully constructed concern. Your Majesty, I understand this is difficult, but the kingdom can wait. Ronan stepped down from the dais, moving with a deliberate slowness that made Elira's stomach twist. Something was wrong with him. Had been wrong for weeks now, maybe longer. She'd noticed it in the way he avoided her eyes during council meetings, the way he'd stopped coming to her chambers at night. She'd thought it was anger, disappointment, the slow death of whatever affection he'd once had for her. But now, watching him cross the throne room with every eye tracking his movement, she wondered if it was something else entirely. He stopped in front of Draven. "Bring in the chosen replacement." Draven hesitated, just for a heartbeat. "Your Majesty, are you certain—" "Now!" The doors at the far end of the hall swung open. Elira's breath caught. Her stepsister walked in like she owned the world. Cassandra Voss had always been beautiful. Golden-haired, bright-eyed, the kind of beautiful that made people forgive her cruelty, because surely someone who looked like that couldn't be truly cruel. She wore white today, a deliberate contrast to Elira's gray. White for purity. White for new beginnings. White for everything Elira wasn't. Behind her, their mother swept in, draped in expensive silks and wearing the expression of a woman who'd just won a war she'd been fighting in secret for years. "Your Majesty," Cassandra curtsied low, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "I am honored beyond words." "Are you?" Ronan didn't look at her. He was still staring at Draven, and there was something dangerous in his eyes now, something that made the Chancellor step back. "Tell me, Chancellor, who suggested this replacement?" Draven blinked. "The Council, Your Majesty. We conducted a thorough search. I didn't ask for a story. I asked who suggested her specifically." The room had gone so quiet, Elira could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the rustle of fabric as people shifted, uncomfortable. "I believe Lady Thorne brought her to our attention," Draven said carefully, "as a suitable candidate from a respected family with proven fertility." "Proven fertility," Ronan repeated, and now he did turn to look at Cassandra. His gaze raked over her slowly, clinically, and Elira saw her stepsister's perfect smile waver. "How exactly does one prove fertility without having borne children?" Cassandra's cheeks flushed. The physicians examined, the same physicians who examined my consort?" Ronan's voice was soft now, deadly soft. "The same physicians who report to Chancellor Draven, who are paid by the royal treasury he controls." Draven's face went pale. "Your Majesty, I must protest." "You may protest all you like." Ronan turned back to face the crowd, and Elira saw him sway slightly, saw him catch himself, saw the flash of pain across his features before he masked it. "I reject this replacement. I reject this entire proceeding." The crowd erupted into chaos. "Your Majesty, please!" Draven's voice rose above the noise. "The kingdom needs an heir. You cannot simply—" "I can do whatever I damn well please. I'm the king." Ronan's eyes found Elira, still kneeling on the cold stone. "Stand up." She froze. "What?" "Stand up." Her legs shook as she pushed herself upright. The gray dress hung on her like a burial shroud. She felt everyone staring, felt the weight of 3,000 judgments pressing down on her shoulders. Ronan crossed to her slowly, each step measured. When he reached her, he held out his hand. She stared at it like it might bite her. "Your Majesty," she whispered, "I don't understand." "That makes two of us." His smile was bitter, broken. "But I know a trap when I see one, and this—" He gestured at the room, at Draven, at Cassandra standing frozen in her white dress. "This is a trap." "A trap?" Draven sputtered. "Your Majesty, we are trying to help." "If you were trying to help, you wouldn't have spent the last 3 months poisoning my consort." The words landed like stones thrown into still water, ripples of shock spreading through the crowd. Elira's hand flew to her throat. "What?" Ronan's jaw tightened. "You think I didn't notice? The tea Lady Thorne sent you every morning, the special tonic the physicians prescribed. The headaches, the nausea, the weakness." His eyes cut to Draven. "Tell me, Chancellor, what herb tastes like honey but prevents conception? What root causes cramping that mimics monthly cycles but ensures no child ever takes hold?" Draven's face had gone from pale to ashen. You can't possibly believe—" "I had my own physician examine the tea leaves from Elira's chambers last week." Do you know what he found? Ronan's voice was steady now, cold as winter stone. Yarrow, pennyroyal, black cohosh, enough to prevent pregnancy in a healthy woman, enough to make a perfectly fertile person appear barren. The room exploded. Elira couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Poisoned? For 3 years she'd believed something was wrong with her. For 3 years she'd carried the shame of failure, the weight of broken promises and disappointed hopes. And it had been a lie? Her mother's face had gone slack with shock, or maybe fear. Cassandra had taken a step backward, her white dress suddenly looking less like a wedding gown and more like a burial shroud. "You have no proof," Draven said, but his voice shook. "These are serious accusations. I have the tea leaves. I have the physician's report. I have 3 years of medical records showing a pattern of symptoms that mysteriously appeared only after Lady Thorne took such a helpful interest in my consort's health." Ronan's hand was still extended toward Elira, steady despite everything. "And I have had enough." "This is insane!" Cassandra burst out, her sweet voice turning sharp. "You would throw away the kingdom's future for a woman who has proven—" "She has proven nothing," Ronan cut her off, "except that she survived 3 years of being slowly poisoned and still stood before this court willing to sacrifice her own happiness for a kingdom that scorned her." His eyes were back on Elira now, and there was something raw in them, something that looked almost like grief. "Take my hand." She looked at his outstretched palm, at the court surrounding them, hungry for blood, for scandal, for whatever came next. At Cassandra, beautiful and furious. At Draven, calculating even now, probably planning his next move. This was insane. If what Ronan said was true, if she'd been poisoned, if this was all a conspiracy, then taking his hand meant war, meant painting a target on both their backs, meant declaring to everyone assembled here that she wasn't broken, wasn't cursed, wasn't going to disappear quietly into whatever corner they'd prepared for discarded consorts. Her whole life, she'd tried to be good, to be useful, to earn her place through service and silence. And where had it gotten her? On her knees in a gray dress while her stepsister prepared to take everything she'd ever wanted. Elira looked at Ronan's hand one more time, then she took it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid, and for the first time in months she felt something other than numb resignation. She felt angry. The crowd roared. Draven shouted something about protocol. Her mother started forward, face twisted with rage, but guards blocked her path. Guards Ronan must have positioned earlier, guards who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. He'd planned this. Somehow, despite everything, he'd planned this. "This isn't over," Draven said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You cannot simply overturn—" "Watch me." Ronan pulled Elira closer, and she felt the tremor running through him, the barely suppressed pain. Whatever was wrong with him, it was getting worse. "This court is dismissed. Anyone who has a problem with my decision can bring it up with my chancellor. Oh, wait." His smile was sharp as broken glass. "I'm firing my chancellor." "You can't. I'm the king. I can do whatever I want." He turned to Elira, and his voice dropped low enough that only she could hear. "Can you walk?" She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "Good. Because we're leaving. Now." He moved toward the side exit, still gripping her hand, and Elira followed because what else could she do? Behind them, the court descended into chaos, people shouting, arguing, demanding answers. She caught a glimpse of Cassandra's face, twisted with fury and disbelief, caught her mother's eyes, full of calculations already shifting, plans reforming. They burst through the side door into a narrow corridor, and Ronan's careful composure cracked. He stumbled, catching himself against the wall with his free hand. His breathing came harsh and ragged. "Your Majesty," Elira started. "Ronan." He squeezed his eyes shut. "After that display, you might as well use my name." "Ronan," she tried again, the name foreign on her tongue. "What's wrong with you?" He laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Besides the obvious, I'm dying." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "The same people who poisoned you have been poisoning me. Different herbs, different goal." He pushed himself off the wall, forcing himself upright through sheer will. "Yours was to prevent conception. Mine is more permanent." "How long?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "The physician thinks maybe a month, maybe less." He started walking again, slower now. There's a curse woven into it. Dark magic. The kind that activates when... He trailed off. When what? He glanced at her, and there was something almost apologetic in his eyes. When I truly bond with my mate. When my heart fully commits. That's when it triggers. That's when it kills me. Elira felt cold spreading through her chest. So the moment I fell in love with you, yes. I signed my own death warrant. His smile was bleak. Poetic, isn't it? They didn't just want to separate us. They wanted to make sure that love itself became the weapon. They rounded a corner, and suddenly they were in the private wing of the palace, away from the crowds and the judgment. Ronan's chambers were ahead, guarded by two men wearing the silver crest of the king's personal guard, men whose loyalty Elira had always assumed was to the crown, not the man wearing it. But when Ronan approached, they bowed low, respectful, real. Captain Wren knows, Ronan said quietly, reading her expression. He's one of the few I trust. His men have been investigating quietly for weeks. That's how we found out about the tea. Why didn't you tell me? He pushed open the door to his chambers, pulling her inside. Because until today, I didn't know if you were part of it. The words stung, but she couldn't entirely blame him. In the game of court politics, trust was a luxury no one could afford. And now? She asked. Now I saw you kneel before everyone you've ever known, and accept shame you didn't deserve because you thought it would protect the kingdom. He let go of her hand finally, moving to a cabinet and pulling out a small wooden box. Now I know you're either the best actress I've ever seen, or you're exactly what you've always appeared to be. Someone who cares more about duty than survival. He opened the box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a vial of dark liquid. What is that? The poison that's been in my wine for 3 months. Captain Wren caught a servant tampering with the bottles. We've been documenting every dose. He set the box down carefully. Draven didn't act alone. He's not smart enough. Someone is backing him. Someone who wants the throne badly enough to commit murder and treason. Elira's mind raced. My mother. Probably, maybe not alone. The court is full of people who'd rather have a weak king they can control than a strong one they can't. He moved to the window, looking out over the capital spread below. I stopped drinking the wine 2 weeks ago. Started recovering, but the curse is still active, still waiting. For what? He turned back to her, and in the afternoon light slanting through the window, she could see how thin he'd become. Could see the shadows under his eyes, the way his clothes hung loose on a frame that had once been solid muscle. For me to complete the bond, he said quietly. The magic is tied to our connection. To finalize it, to make it permanent, that's when it triggers. That's when my heart stops. Then we don't, Elira said immediately. We don't complete it. We stay like this and give them exactly what they want, a kingdom without an heir, a king without a mate, instability they can exploit? He shook his head. That's not a solution. That's slow death instead of fast. Better slow than dead. Is it? He studied her face. You were ready to walk away today, to let Cassandra take your place. Why? The question caught her off guard. Because I thought it was what the kingdom needed. That's what you told yourself. But what did you want? No one had asked her that in years, maybe ever. I wanted... She stopped, the words tangling in her throat. I wanted to matter. I wanted to be more than just a duty or a failure. I wanted to be chosen because someone wanted me, not because I was convenient or suitable or acceptable. The silence stretched between them. I'm dying, Ronan said finally, and I have maybe a month to expose a conspiracy, root out traitors, and save a kingdom from tearing itself apart. I can't do that alone. I need someone I can trust, someone who won't flinch when things get ugly, someone who... He paused. Someone who loves this kingdom enough to kneel before everyone and give up everything for it. I don't understand what you're asking. I'm asking you to help me burn it all down. His eyes met hers, fever bright. The corruption, the lies, the people who poisoned us both and thought they could get away with it. I'm asking you to stop being the woman who steps aside and become the woman who fights back. Elira thought about the gray dress, about kneeling while people she'd once considered friends whispered about her failure, about 3 years of shame that had been built on lies and poison. She thought about Cassandra's smug smile, about Draven's false sympathy, about her mother's calculating eyes. She thought about Ronan, dying slowly, trapped by magic designed to punish him for daring to love. "If we do this," she said slowly, "if we fight back, people will die. The court will fracture. There could be civil war." "I know. And you're still asking me to help you?" "Yes." "Why me? You could choose anyone, someone stronger, smarter." "Because everyone else has something to lose," he cut her off. "Status, position, family alliances. They'll all fold when the pressure gets too high. But you?" He stepped closer. "You've already lost everything. You have nothing left to lose and everything to prove. That makes you the most dangerous person in this entire kingdom." She looked at him, really looked at him, saw past the crown and the title to the man underneath, a man who'd stood before an entire court and rejected their carefully laid plans, a man who'd taken her hand when everyone else wanted her gone, a man who was dying because he'd fallen in love with her. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. His smile was sharp and sad. "First, survive. They'll come for you now, for both of us. We've made ourselves targets. And second, help me figure out who's really behind this. Draven is a puppet. Your mother is ambitious, but not creative. Someone else is pulling the strings. Someone smart enough to weave dark magic into poison, patient enough to wait 3 years for their plan to work." He moved back to the cabinet, pulling out a stack of papers. "Captain Wren has been gathering evidence. Names, dates, meetings. We need to find the pattern. Find out who benefits most from my death." Elira took the papers, scanning the top page. It was a record of council meetings, notes in Captain Wren's precise handwriting. "You really think we can do this? Expose them all before I die?" He shrugged. "Honestly, I have no idea. But I'd rather go down fighting than let them win by default." A knock at the door made them both freeze. "Your Majesty," Captain Wren's voice came through the thick wood. "We have a problem." Ronan opened the door. The captain stood there, grim-faced, with 2 of his guards flanking him. "What happened?" "Chancellor Draven has called an emergency session of the High Council. He's claiming you're unfit to rule, citing erratic behavior, paranoid delusions, and," he paused, clearly uncomfortable, "dark influence from the former consort." "Former?" Elira's voice came out sharper than she intended. "He's already started spreading the word that your rejection of the proceedings was invalid, that you remain stripped of your title and position, that the king is compromised." Ronan's jaw tightened. "How many council members showed up?" "All of them, and they're voting on whether to invoke the Regent Protocol." The Regent Protocol. Elira had heard of it only once in a dusty history book. It was the emergency procedure for removing a king deemed incapable of ruling by reason of madness, incapacity, or threat to the realm. "They can't," she said. "They can't just remove you." "They can if they have majority vote and 2 witnesses to sign the incapacity declaration." Captain Wren's expression was bleak. "Draven is confident he has the votes. And I'd bet anything your mother and sister are already preparing to testify that you've been manipulating His Majesty with dark magic." Ronan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course they are. Accuse us of exactly what they've been doing. Classic." "What do we do?" Elira asked. "We crash their meeting." Ronan grabbed a formal jacket from the wardrobe, pulling it on despite the way his hands shook. "If they want to declare me unfit, they can do it to my face." "Your Majesty, that's exactly what they want," Captain Wren protested. "They'll provoke you, make you lose your temper, use it as evidence. Then I won't lose my temper." He turned to Elira. "But you might need to." She blinked. "What?" "They think you're weak, broken. The woman who knelt quietly and accepted her fate." His smile was sharp now, calculating. "Show them they're wrong. Show them you're done kneeling." "I don't understand. The High Council respects strength. They despise weakness." He was moving toward the door now, Captain Wren falling into step beside him. "Walk in there like you own the place. Like you're not the former consort, you're the queen. Like anyone who says otherwise is beneath your notice." "But I'm not the queen. Not yet." He glanced back at her. "But you will be, if we survive the next hour." They strode through the palace corridors, and Elira felt the eyes on her. Servants pressing themselves against walls, courtiers whispering behind fans. Everyone had heard by now. The whole palace was probably buzzing with the story of the king's dramatic rejection, the accusations of poison, the chaos in the throne room. She'd spent 3 years trying to be invisible, trying not to make waves, trying to earn acceptance through quiet service. That version of her had died on her knees in the throne room. The woman walking beside King Ronan Kael now, past staring courtiers, past whispering servants, past guards who didn't know whether to bow or look away. This woman was done being quiet. The council chamber doors loomed ahead, already closed. Captain Wren moved to open them, but Ronan held up a hand. "Let her," he said quietly. Elira stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't let it show. She pressed both palms against the heavy wood and pushed. The doors swung open with a satisfying crash. Every head in the council chamber turned. Chancellor Draven stood at the head of the table, mid-sentence, his face going pale as Ronan walked in with Elira at his side. The 12 members of the High Council sat frozen, clearly not expecting this interruption. "Your Majesty," Draven recovered quickly, "this is a closed session, then open it." Ronan moved to the empty chair at the head of the table, the king's chair, currently occupied by Draven. "You're in my seat." Draven didn't move. "Your Majesty, we are conducting legitimate council business." Attempting a coup is legitimate council business now. Ronan's voice was deceptively mild. "How progressive." "We are not attempting a coup. We are concerned about your welfare and the welfare of the kingdom." Draven gestured to the assembled council members. "We all witnessed your erratic behavior today. The unfounded accusations, the paranoid delusions, the documentation of systematic poisoning." Ronan pulled the vial from his pocket, setting it on the table with a decisive clink. "The evidence of conspiracy? That kind of paranoid delusion?" Several council members leaned forward, eyeing the vial. "That proves nothing," Draven said smoothly. "For all we know, you could have poisoned yourself to create this narrative. Why would I poison myself? To avoid your responsibilities. To keep a consort who has failed in her primary duty." Draven's eyes cut to Elira. "To maintain an inappropriate attachment that undermines the kingdom's future. My attachment is none of your concern. It is when it threatens the realm." Lady Thorne spoke up from her seat near the middle of the table. Elira's mother looked immaculate as always, her expression perfectly crafted concern. "Your Majesty, we understand that matters of the heart are complicated, but you cannot let personal feelings override the needs of the kingdom. Elira is my daughter, and I love her, but even I must admit, she has had 3 years and produced no heir. That is simply fact." "Fact," Elira said quietly, and everyone turned to look at her. "Is that what we're calling it now? When you sent me tea every morning for 3 years, special tea, from your personal garden." Her mother's expression didn't flicker. "I sent you herbal remedies to help with your health." "You sent me poison." Elira's voice was steady now, the anger burning cold and bright. "Yarrow, pennyroyal, black cohosh, enough to prevent pregnancy while making me believe the fault was mine." "That's absurd." "Is it? Because King Ronan had the tea leaves tested. And I'd be very interested to hear you explain why herbs specifically designed to prevent conception were in my morning tea for 3 years. Unless," she tilted her head, "you'd like to claim it was an accident, that you accidentally, repeatedly, for 3 years straight, sent me abortifacients disguised as health tonics?" The silence in the chamber was absolute. Lady Thorne's mask finally cracked, just for a second, but Elira saw it. The flash of rage, quickly suppressed. "You ungrateful—" "Careful, mother." Elira smiled, and it felt dangerous, felt powerful. "We're in front of the High Council. Every word is being recorded. Do you really want to finish that sentence?" "This is ridiculous," Draven cut in. "Even if, and I emphasize if, there was some irregularity with the tea, that doesn't explain His Majesty's current state. Look at him." Every eye turned to Ronan, and Elira saw what they saw, the pallor, the weakness, the barely suppressed tremors. He looked like a man on the edge of collapse. "The king is clearly ill," Draven continued, "possibly dying. And in his weakened state, he's become paranoid, seeing conspiracies where there are none, clinging to a failed consort because he's too sick to think clearly. I'm sick because you poisoned me, you bastard. Prove it. Draven's smile was confident, too confident. You have a vial of liquid you claim is poison. You have accusations, but you have no proof of who administered it, how it was done, or even that you were actually poisoned. You could be naturally ill. You could be making this entire thing up. And frankly, he looked around at the council. Your behavior today suggests that illness has affected your judgment. Ronan's hands curled into fists, and Elira saw him swaying, saw the pain flashing across his face, saw him fighting to stay upright. Draven was right. They had evidence, but not enough. Not the kind that would stand up to this kind of coordinated denial. I propose we vote, Draven said, all in favor of invoking the Regent Protocol until His Majesty recovers from his current illness. No, Elira said. Draven paused. I'm sorry, did you say something? I said no. She moved around the table, positioning herself between Draven and Ronan. You don't get to vote on this. Not yet. Lady Voss, you have no authority here. Don't I? She turned to face the council. I'm the king's consort. Whatever you think of my fertility or my value, that bond hasn't been legally dissolved, which means I have the right to speak in council proceedings, and I'm invoking my right to a formal inquiry. Draven's eyes narrowed. On what grounds? Attempted murder? Conspiracy? Treason. She kept her voice level, calm. Before you vote to remove the king, I'm demanding a full investigation into the allegations of poisoning, independent physicians, full records review, and testimony under oath from everyone involved in my medical care and the king's food preparation for the past 6 months. That could take weeks. Then it takes weeks. But you don't get to stage a coup and call it concern for the king's welfare without answering some very basic questions first. She glanced at the assembled council. Unless you're all comfortable voting to remove your king based on the word of a man who stands to gain the most from his removal? That landed. She saw it in the way several council members shifted, uncomfortable, in the way Lord Benson frowned, clearly thinking it through. The lady makes a fair point, Councillor Marin said slowly. She was an older woman, one of the few members who'd always been polite to Elira, even during her disgrace. If there are questions about poisoning, they should be answered before we take such a drastic step. There are no questions, Draven snapped. There are paranoid delusions from a sick king. Then an inquiry will prove that. Elira met his eyes. And you'll be vindicated, unless you're afraid of what an inquiry might find. The trap closed around him. If he refused, he looked guilty. If he agreed, he risked the investigation actually finding evidence. Draven's smile was cold. Fine. We'll have your inquiry. But until it's complete, I'm moving that the king submit to medical rest. No official duties, no public appearances. For his own health. That's essentially house arrest, Captain Wren said from his position by the door. That's medical care. Draven looked around the table. All in favor? 8 hands rose, just enough for a majority. Ronan laughed, the sound bitter. Well played. This is for your own good, Your Majesty. Draven's expression was sympathetic now, sickening in its false concern. You need rest, recovery. And Lady Voss, his eyes cut to Elira, will be housed separately during the inquiry, to avoid any appearance of impropriety or influence. Absolutely not, Ronan said. I'm afraid it's not optional. The vote has passed. Draven gestured and guards appeared in the doorway. Not Captain Wren's men, different uniforms. Men loyal to the council, not the crown. Please escort His Majesty to his chambers, and Lady Voss to the South Wing guest quarters. This is insane! Ronan started forward, but his legs gave out. Captain Wren caught him before he hit the floor, and Elira saw the truth written in every line of his body. He was dying. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And Draven knew it, was counting on it. Take her, Draven said, nodding to Elira. The guards moved toward her. She could fight, could make a scene, could... Ronan's eyes met hers across the room, and she saw the message there. Don't, not here, not now. She let them take her arms, let them lead her toward the door. But as she passed Draven, she leaned in close enough that only he could hear. You won't win, she whispered. His smile was sharp. I already have. They pulled her out into the corridor, and the last thing she saw before the council chamber doors closed was Ronan, pale and shaking, being half carried by Captain Wren, while her mother watched with cold satisfaction. She'd stood up, she'd fought back, she'd demanded an inquiry, and she'd lost anyway. The guards marched her through the palace, and Elira felt the eyes following her again. But this time the whispers were different. This time they were saying she'd been arrested, that she'd bewitched the king, that she'd been caught practicing dark magic. The lies were already spreading. They reached the south wing, the guest quarters where visiting nobles stayed, comfortable enough but isolated, cut off from the main palace. The guards opened a door and pushed her inside. You're confined to these rooms until the inquiry is complete, one of them said. Am I a prisoner? You're a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. His face was blank, professional, just following orders. Food will be brought to you. You're not to leave or receive visitors without council approval. The door closed. The lock clicked. Elira stood in the middle of the room, still wearing the gray dress from the throne room ceremony that felt like it had happened years ago instead of hours. She'd fought back. And now she was alone, locked away, while Ronan died slowly and Draven consolidated power and her mother planned whatever came next. She moved to the window. It overlooked the inner courtyard, far from Ronan's chambers, far from anywhere she could help. But as the sun set over the capital, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Elira made herself a promise. They thought they'd won, thought they'd trapped her, thought she'd fold now, like she'd folded before, accepting her fate with quiet dignity. They were wrong. She'd knelt once. She'd stepped aside once. She'd let them make her small. Never again. Whatever it took, whatever she had to do, whoever she had to become, she would find the truth. She would expose the conspiracy. She would save Ronan, and she would burn down everyone who tried to destroy them both. The woman who stepped aside was dead. The woman who remained was done playing by their rules. The first night in the south wing, Elira didn't sleep. She paced the room instead, counting steps between the window and the door. 43 steps. She'd walked it so many times the number was burned into her brain. 43 steps in a cage that smelled of lavender and lies, while somewhere in the main palace, Ronan was dying. The food they brought her sat untouched on the table. She didn't trust it, didn't trust anything that came through that door. By the second day, hunger made her reconsider. She picked at the bread, nibbling tiny pieces and waiting to see if her stomach rebelled. When nothing happened after an hour, she ate more. Survival first. Paranoia second. On the third day, the guard rotation changed, and she recognized one of the new men. Marcus. He'd been part of the palace guard when she first arrived 3 years ago, had always nodded respectfully when she passed. Now he wouldn't meet her eyes. Marcus, she called through the door when he brought her evening meal. Please, I need to know if the king is all right. He set the tray down without a word. Please, just tell me if he's alive. His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might actually respond. Then he turned and walked away, the lock clicking behind him with brutal finality. She threw the water pitcher against the wall. It shattered, pieces scattering across the floor like broken promises. The sound felt good. Felt like something she could control in a world that had spun completely out of her grasp. On the fourth day, they brought her a visitor. Elira looked up from the book she'd been pretending to read when the door opened. She'd expected another silent guard, another wordless meal delivery. Instead, Cassandra walked in. Her stepsister wore pale blue today, the color of winter skies and frozen lakes. Her hair was arranged in elaborate braids that must have taken hours. She looked like someone preparing for a coronation. Hello, sister, Cassandra said, her voice sweet as spoiled fruit. Elira didn't stand. What do you want? To talk. Is that so strange? Cassandra glanced around the room, taking in the broken pottery shards still scattered in the corner, the rumpled bed, the books stacked haphazardly on every surface. They're treating you well, I see. I'm locked in a room. How well can they possibly be treating me? Better than you deserve, honestly. Cassandra settled into a chair uninvited, arranging her skirts with practiced precision. You made quite the scene in the throne room. Mother was mortified. Mother poisoned me for 3 years. I think she'll survive some embarrassment. You can't actually believe that. Cassandra's laugh was light, dismissive. Mother sent you herbal tea. That's not poison, that's kindness. Kindness doesn't contain pennyroyal. You don't know what you're talking about. The stress has obviously... I know exactly what I'm talking about. Elira set down her book carefully, meeting her stepsister's eyes. I know Mother wanted you on the throne instead of me. I know Draven has been planning this coup for months, maybe years, and I know you've been part of it from the beginning. Cassandra's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. Still so dramatic. You always were like this, making everything about yourself, inventing conspiracies when the simple truth is just too painful to accept. And what's the simple truth? That you failed. Cassandra leaned forward, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. 3 years, Elira. 3 years of every advantage, every opportunity, and you couldn't produce a single heir. That's not conspiracy. That's just failure. The words hit exactly where they were meant to, finding the soft, vulnerable places Elira had tried so hard to armor. Because part of her, the part that had knelt in the throne room, the part that had accepted shame as her due, still believed it. Still thought maybe she deserved this. But that part was getting smaller every day. Why are you here? Elira asked again. Not to insult me. You could do that from anywhere. Cassandra sat back, reassessing. I'm here with an offer. I'm listening. Confess that you used dark magic to manipulate the king. Sign a statement saying you placed him under a spell to keep him bound to you despite your obvious inadequacy. Cassandra pulled a folded paper from her sleeve, setting it on the table between them. Do that, and the inquiry ends. You'll be exiled instead of executed. You can disappear quietly, live out your days somewhere far from court, maybe even find happiness. Elira stared at the paper. And if I refuse? Then the inquiry continues, and I think we both know what it will find. A desperate woman who turned to forbidden magic when she couldn't fulfill her duties naturally. Evidence will emerge, witnesses will testify, and you'll burn for it. You'd frame me. I'd reveal the truth. Cassandra's smile was radiant, terrible. The king is dying, Elira. Whether from your curse or simple illness doesn't really matter anymore. He'll be dead within the month. And when he is, the kingdom will need a new ruler. Someone untainted by scandal. Someone who can actually produce an heir and secure the succession. Someone like you. Someone like me, Cassandra agreed. I'm offering you mercy. A way out before things get worse. You should take it. Elira picked up the paper, unfolding it slowly. The confession was already written, neat and precise. All it needed was her signature, her surrender. She tore it in half, then tore those pieces in half again. Cassandra's expression finally cracked. You stupid, stubborn... Get out. You're making a mistake. I said get out. Elira stood, and there must have been something in her face because Cassandra actually flinched. Tell Mother and Draven and whoever else is pulling your strings that I'm not confessing to crimes I didn't commit. Tell them they can fabricate all the evidence they want, but I'll fight it. Every step, every lie. And when this is over, when the truth comes out, I'm going to watch all of you burn. Cassandra rose smoothly, her composure reassembling. You always thought you were better than me, smarter, more worthy. But look where we are now. She gestured around the locked room. I'm free. You're caged. I'm ascending. You're falling, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. She swept toward the door, then paused. The king asked about you, yesterday before they sedated him. He was delirious, barely conscious, and he still tried to get out of bed to find you. They had to restrain him. Her smile was poisonous. It was pathetic, really. A king reduced to that. You've destroyed him as surely as any curse. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Elira stood frozen, Cassandra's words echoing in her head. Ronan had tried to reach her, was being restrained, sedated, held prisoner just like she was while the conspiracy tightened around them both. She looked down at the torn confession scattered at her feet. They wanted her to fold, to break, to make it easy for them. She bent down, gathering every scrap of paper. Then she walked to the fireplace, unlit, useless in the summer heat, and arranged the pieces carefully on the grate. When this was over, she'd light them herself. Watch them burn the way she'd watched 3 years of her life burn in that throne room. But first, she needed to survive. And to do that, she needed information. That night, when Marcus brought her meal, she tried a different approach. "How much are they paying you?" she asked. He froze in the doorway. "Draven and the council. To keep me locked up, to keep me quiet." "How much?" "I'm just following orders," he said, not looking at her. "We're all just following orders. That's what everyone says when empires fall and innocent people die." She moved closer to the door. "But you knew me, Marcus, before all this. You served under the king when I first came to court. You know I'm not some dark witch." His hands tightened on the tray. "What I know doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters." She kept her voice soft, urgent. "They're staging a coup. They've poisoned the king. They've fabricated evidence against me. And they're counting on good men like you to look the other way while they destroy everything this kingdom is supposed to stand for." "I have a family," he said quietly. "A wife. 2 daughters. If I step out of line, they'll use that against you. I know. I understand." She did understand. Fear was a leash they used to control everyone. "But if we don't fight back, if we all just keep our heads down and follow orders, what kind of kingdom are we leaving for your daughters?" He finally met her eyes. "What do you want from me?" "Information, that's all. Just tell me what's happening with the king. Is he alive? Is he conscious? Are they still poisoning him?" Marcus glanced over his shoulder, checking the corridor. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "He's alive. Barely. The physicians say he has some kind of wasting disease. They're treating him with medicines, but he keeps getting worse." "What kind of medicines?" "I don't know. I'm not allowed in the royal wing anymore. None of the regular guards are. Draven has his own men posted there now." Elira's stomach twisted. "So they've completely isolated him." "Captain Wren tried to get through yesterday. They turned him away. Said the king was too weak for visitors, that he needed absolute rest." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. There was shouting, almost came to blows, but Wren backed down. He didn't have the numbers. "What about the inquiry? Into the poisoning allegations?" "Still ongoing, supposedly, but I heard Draven talking to some council members. They're not actually investigating. They're just waiting." "For what?" Marcus's expression was bleak. "For the king to die. Then it all becomes moot, doesn't it? Dead men can't press charges." He left before she could respond, the door locking with its now familiar click. Elira paced the room again, mind racing. Ronan was isolated, possibly being poisoned, definitely dying. She was locked away, powerless to help. Captain Wren was being blocked. The inquiry was a sham. They were running out of time. She needed to get out, needed to reach Ronan, needed to do something other than sit in this cage waiting for the inevitable. The window was too high, the drop too far. She'd checked a dozen times. The door was solid oak, the lock complex. The guards rotated every 6 hours, always at least 2 of them. But guards were human, and humans made mistakes. She spent the next day preparing, tore strips from the bed sheets and braided them into a rope, not strong enough to hold her weight for climbing, but good enough for what she had in mind. Found a sharp shard of the broken pottery and wrapped it in cloth, tucked it into her sleeve. When Marcus brought her evening meal on the 6th day, she was ready. "Marcus?" she called as he set down the tray. "I need to ask you something, about your daughters." He paused, wary. "What about them? What are their names? Why do you want to know?" "Because I'd like to remember them. The children of the man who tried to help me, even when it was dangerous. The girls who'll grow up in whatever kingdom comes after this." She smiled, sad and genuine. "What are their names?" His throat worked. "Lily and Rose." "Lily and Rose," she repeated softly. "When this is over, when the truth comes out and Draven falls, I'll remember that you tried to do the right thing. I'll make sure they know their father was brave. I'm not brave, I'm just scared." "I know, so am I." She met his eyes. "But we can still choose to do the right thing, even when we're terrified. That's what courage actually is." He stood there for a long moment, conflict written across his face. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive, and left. She'd planted the seed. Now she had to wait and see if it would grow. That night, she lay awake in the dark, listening to the guards change shifts, listening to the palace settle around her. Somewhere in the main wing, Ronan was fighting for his life. Somewhere in the council chambers, Draven was consolidating power. Somewhere in the noble quarter, her mother was planning the next move. And here she was, locked in a room, helpless. No, not helpless. Just trapped. There was a difference. She thought about the curse Ronan had described. Dark magic woven into poison, designed to kill him when he fully bonded with his mate, when he fell completely in love. The cruelty of it was elegant, really. Make love itself the weapon. Make connection the trigger. Ensure that the moment he gave his heart completely, it would stop beating. But curses had rules. Magic always had rules. And if she could figure out the rules, maybe she could find a way to break them. The problem was, she knew nothing about magic. Nothing about curses. She'd spent 3 years being the perfect, powerless consort. Decorative, dutiful, deliberately ignorant of anything that might make her useful. That version of herself felt like a stranger now. On the 7th day, the door opened and Captain Wren walked in. Elira shot to her feet. "Captain, sit down," he said quietly, glancing over his shoulder. "We don't have much time." She sat. He remained standing, positioned so he could watch the door. "The king is dying," he said without preamble. "The physicians say maybe a week, maybe less." The words hit like a physical blow. A week. Draven is accelerating his timeline. He's planning to have you tried and executed before the king dies. Wants it clean, remove the corrupting influence, let Ronan pass peacefully, install Cassandra as regent until a proper marriage can be arranged. How do you know this? I have people still loyal to the crown. Not many, but enough. His expression was grim. The trial is set for tomorrow. Closed proceedings, hand-picked judges. The outcome is predetermined. Then we run. Tonight. We get the king and we go where? Wren's voice was harsh. The whole capital is locked down. Draven has guards at every gate. Even if we could get his majesty out of the palace, which we can't, he's too weak to move. Where would we take him? Elira's mind raced, searching for options, finding none. There has to be something. There is. Wren pulled a small vial from his pocket, setting it on the table between them. Poison. Fast-acting, painless. If you drink it tonight, you're dead before morning. The trial becomes unnecessary. Draven loses his spectacle. She stared at the vial. "You're telling me to kill myself." "I'm giving you a choice. Die on your terms or die on theirs." "That's not a choice, that's surrender. It's survival, of a sort." His voice softened just slightly. "I've seen what they do to people convicted of dark magic, Lady Voss. I've seen them burn. If you take this, at least you go quickly, cleanly, without the whole kingdom watching." Elira picked up the vial, turning it over in her hands. The liquid inside was clear as water. It would be so easy. Drink it down, close her eyes, let the darkness take her. No more fighting, no more struggling against impossible odds, no more watching Ronan die while she sat helpless. "What happens to the king if I do this?" she asked. Wren's jaw tightened. "He dies. Probably within days. Draven installs Cassandra. Life goes on. And the conspiracy, the poisoning, the coup? Buried. Forgotten. Written into history as the tragic tale of a king who loved unwisely and paid the price." She set the vial down carefully. "No. Lady Voss, I'm not dying for their convenience." The anger was back, burning hot and bright. "I'm not making it easy for them to rewrite history. If they want me dead, they'll have to kill me themselves, publicly. Let the whole kingdom see what they're willing to do to maintain their lie." Wren studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "His Majesty said you'd say that." "What?" "He asked me to give you the poison, said you deserved a way out." Wren pocketed the vial. "But he also said if you refused, I was to give you this." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket, pressing it into her hand. "Read it after I leave. Memorize it. Burn it." "What is it?" "A way to fight back." "Maybe." He moved toward the door. "The trial is tomorrow at noon. They'll come for you at dawn. Whatever you're going to do, you have about 12 hours to do it." "Captain," she started, but he was already gone. the door closing and locking behind him. Elira unfolded the paper with shaking hands. The handwriting was Ronan's. She recognized the sharp angles, the impatient strokes. If you're reading this, you refuse the easy way out. Good. I knew you would. Listen carefully. The curse that's killing me is tied to our bond. The more we connect, the stronger it gets. But it works both ways. If you can find the source, the witch who cast it, the object that anchors it, you can unravel it. Curses need an anchor, something physical, something tied to both of us. Captain Wren's sources traced the magic to the northern border. A witch named Morvana. She's been in hiding for years, but she's known for curse work, specifically for binding curses that tie two souls together and tear them apart. I can't go to her. I'm too weak, too watched. But you could. If you get out, if you run, don't run away. Run toward the problem. Find Morvana. Make her undo what she's done. Or kill her and break the curse that way. I know what I'm asking. I know the odds. But if there's anyone in this kingdom stubborn enough to walk into a witch's lair and demand answers, it's you. Don't come back for me. Don't try to break me out. Just go north. Fix this. And if I die before you return, at least I'll die knowing you're alive and fighting. That's enough. Our Elira read it 3 times. Then she held it to the candle flame and watched it burn, the words turning to ash and smoke. 12 hours until they came for her. 12 hours to escape a locked room in a guarded wing in a palace surrounded by Draven's men. Impossible odds. But she'd spent 3 years accepting the impossible. She was done with that now. She pulled the braided sheet rope from under her bed, took the pottery shard from her sleeve, checked the window one more time, measuring distances, calculating angles. The drop was still too far to survive, but there was a ledge about halfway down, part of the architectural decoration that lined this wing. If she could reach that, she could move laterally to the next window, which belonged to a different set of rooms. Rooms that might not be locked. It was insane. Reckless. Likely to end with her broken on the courtyard stones. But staying meant a show trial and execution, meant letting Draven win, meant Ronan dying alone while she burned for crimes she didn't commit. She'd rather fall. Elira tied one end of the sheet rope to the bedpost, testing the knot 3 times, tied the other end around her waist. Opened the window as quietly as she could, grateful for the summer night and the breeze that covered any small sounds. The courtyard below was dark, empty. The guards were posted at the door, not outside. They weren't expecting her to be stupid enough to try climbing. She was absolutely that stupid. Elira climbed onto the windowsill, the stone cold under her bare feet. The drop yawned below her, dark and hungry. If the rope broke, if the knot failed, if her grip slipped, stop. Don't think. Just move. She lowered herself over the edge. The first few feet were the worst, her body pressed against the rough stone, her fingers screaming as they found tiny holds and cracks. The makeshift rope bit into her waist, taking some of her weight, but not enough. Down. Keep going down. The ledge was closer now, just another 10 feet. Her arms shook with the effort. Sweat made her palms slick. Almost there. Her foot found the ledge and she nearly sobbed with relief. It was narrow, barely 8 inches wide, but it was solid. She pressed herself against the wall, catching her breath, not looking down. The next window was 20 feet to her left, 20 feet of carefully moving along a ledge designed to look pretty, not to support a person's weight. She started to move, sliding her feet along the stone, keeping her weight distributed, her breathing steady. Halfway there, a chunk of decorative stonework crumbled under her hand. She froze, heart hammering, as pieces tumbled down into the darkness below. Somewhere, a guard shouted. Had they heard? Were they coming? No time. Move. She reached the window. It was latched from the inside. Of course it was. Why would anything be easy? Elira pulled the pottery shard from her sleeve, sliding it between the window frame and the latch. It took 3 tries, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped the shard twice. The latch clicked open. She pulled the window up and half fell, half climbed inside, landing in a graceless heap on someone's bedroom floor. The room was empty. Thank every star in the sky. Elira untied the rope from her waist, her fingers numb and clumsy. She was in. She'd actually escaped her locked room. Now she just had to get out of the palace, evade Draven's guards, and travel north to find a witch who might kill her on sight. Simple. She crept to the bedroom door listening, voices in the corridor outside, but they were moving away. A patrol, maybe, or just servants going about their business. She waited until the voices faded, then slipped out into the hallway. The south wing was unfamiliar to her, but all palace wings followed the same basic layout. Servants' stairs in the end of each corridor, leading down to the kitchens and service areas. If she could reach those, she could get to the lower levels, find a way out through the delivery entrances. If she moved through the shadows, staying close to the walls, freezing every time she heard footsteps. Twice she had to duck into empty rooms as patrols passed. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain someone would hear it. The stairs. Finally, she descended quickly, quietly, her bare feet silent on the stone. The kitchen level was bustling even at this hour, night staff preparing tomorrow's bread, servants hauling supplies. Too many people, too much activity, but also too much chaos for anyone to notice one more person in a plain dress moving through the shadows. Elira grabbed a kitchen servant's cloak from a hook by the door, pulling it over her gray dress. Drew the hood up, kept her head down, walked straight through the kitchen like she belonged there. No one stopped her. The delivery entrance was ahead, doors propped open to let in the night air while workers unloaded carts. She could see the courtyard beyond, the gates, freedom. "You there?" Elira's blood froze. She turned slowly. A chef stood glaring at her, cleaver in hand. "Where are you going with that cloak?" Her mind went blank. "The baker sent me to check on the flour delivery. At this hour? That's morning shift work. There was a problem with the order. He wanted me to verify, what's your name?" She was caught. Any second now he'd realize she didn't work here, would call the guards, would... "Sarah," a voice said from behind her. "She's new. Started yesterday." Elira turned to see a young woman, maybe 17, carrying a tray of vegetables. The woman met her eyes for just a second, and Elira saw recognition there. Recognition and pity? The chef grunted. "Well, tell the baker if he has problems with deliveries, he can deal with them himself during proper hours. And get that cloak back where it belongs." "Yes, sir," the young woman said. Then, quieter, to Elira, "Come on, I'll show you." She led Elira away from the delivery entrance, back toward the storage rooms. Once they were alone, she stopped. "You're her," the girl whispered. "The king's consort, the one they locked up." Elira's hand moved toward the pottery shard still hidden in her sleeve. "I don't know what you... My brother is Marcus, one of the guards." The girl's eyes were wide, urgent. "He told me what's happening, the coup, the trial, everything. He said if I saw you, I should help." "Why would you help me?" "Because my father died fighting for King Ronan during the border wars. And if the king says you're innocent, that's good enough for me." She glanced over her shoulder, checking for listeners. "You need to get out of the city. They have guards at all the main gates, but the river gate is less watched. If you can get to the docks..." "The docks," Elira repeated, her mind already racing. "How do I get there from here?" "Through the lower city. There are tunnels, old smuggler routes. I can get you to the entrance, but after that you're on your own." The girl pulled off her own cloak, a heavier one than the one Elira had stolen. "Take this, and this..." She pressed something into Elira's hand. A small purse, heavy with coins. "It's not much, but it's enough for passage on a boat. Maybe some food." "I can't take your money." "My brother said you're trying to save the king. That's worth more than a few coins." The girl's smile was fierce, brave. "Come on. We have to move before the next patrol." She led Elira through a maze of service corridors and storage rooms, downstairs Elira hadn't known existed, into the bowels of the palace where the old foundations met bedrock. The air grew cold, damp, the walls wept moisture. "There," the girl pointed to a gap in the wall, barely visible behind a stack of wine barrels. "That leads to the tunnel system. Follow it east until you hit the junction, then take the right fork. It'll bring you out near the fish market, close to the docks." "Thank you," Elira whispered. "What's your name?" "Better if you don't know. That way if they catch you, you can't tell them who helped you." She squeezed Elira's hand once. "Save him. The king. We need good men to survive, or what's the point of any of this?" Then she was gone, disappearing back up the stairs, leaving Elira alone in the dark with a tunnel ahead and a kingdom crumbling behind her. Elira pulled the heavy cloak tighter and stepped into the gap. The tunnel was exactly as advertised. Low-ceilinged, narrow, pitch black. She felt her way forward, hands on the damp stone walls, counting steps to keep herself oriented. The darkness was absolute, pressing in from all sides. Somewhere above her, they were probably discovering her escape by now, raising alarms, sending guards to search. She moved faster, ignoring the way her shoulders scraped against the walls, the way her feet slipped on the wet stone. The junction came up suddenly, a place where 3 tunnels met, the space opening up enough that she could stand fully upright. She took the right fork like the girl had said, and after another 100 yards of stumbling through darkness, she saw light ahead. The tunnel mouth opened behind a tumble of old crates and fishing nets. Beyond it, the fish market was mostly deserted this time of night, just a few late workers cleaning the stalls. Elira emerged carefully, checking for guards. None visible. She pulled the hood of the cloak lower and headed for the docks. The river stretched black and wide before her, dotted with boats rocking gently at their moorings. She needed passage north, needed it quietly, without questions. A man sat on a dock post, smoking a pipe and watching the water. Old, weathered, with the look of someone who'd seen everything and been surprised by none of it. "Excuse me," Elira approached carefully. "I'm looking for passage upriver." He eyed her. "At this hour? What's the hurry?" "Family emergency. My sister is ill." The lie came easily. "I need to get to the northern border as quickly as possible." "Northern border's a long way. Expensive trip." She held up the purse. "I can pay." He took it, weighing it in his hand, then nodded. "My nephew runs cargo up to Thornhaven. Leaves at dawn. I can get you a berth, but it won't be comfortable." "I don't need comfortable. I need fast and quiet." "Quiet I can do. Fast depends on the river." He stood, joints cracking. "Come on. Boat's this way. You can wait on board. Less chance of anyone noticing you that way." He led her to a medium-sized cargo vessel, speaking quietly to a young man who was checking ropes. Money changed hands. The young man, the nephew, presumably, gestured for Elira to come aboard. "Stay below deck until we're past the city gates," he said. "Once we're clear, you can come topside. But right now, best no one sees we have a passenger." Elira descended into the hold. It smelled of fish and river water and old wood, but it was safe. Or as safe as anywhere could be right now. She found a corner behind some crates and sat down, finally letting herself feel the exhaustion, the terror, the sheer impossible reality of what she'd just done. She'd escaped. Actually escaped. Now came the hard part. Finding a witch who specialized in death curses, convincing her to help, breaking the magic that was killing Ronan, all while Draven consolidated power, while her trial proceeded without her, while the kingdom she'd tried to save turned her into a fugitive. The boat rocked gently beneath her. Somewhere above, she heard the nephew calling orders to someone, heard the sounds of the city waking up as dawn approached. By the time they discovered she was gone, she'd be miles upriver. By the time they organized pursuit, she'd be even further. And by the time she reached Morvana's lair, she'd either be dead or she'd have answers. Either way, she was done running away. She was running toward the problem now, just like Ronan had asked. The boat lurched as it cast off from the dock. Elira felt the current catch them, pulling them north toward the border, toward a witch who trafficked in curses and broken bonds, toward the only chance they had left. She closed her eyes and let the river carry her into the unknown, every mile taking her further from the palace, further from safety, deeper into a gamble that would either save them both or destroy everything. But at least she was moving. At least she was fighting. And in the darkness of the cargo hold, as the boat slipped past the sleeping city, Elira Voss made herself a promise. She would find the witch, break the curse, and return to the capital with proof of the conspiracy. Or she would die trying. Either way, Draven and her mother and Cassandra and everyone who'd tried to erase her would learn one simple truth. The woman they'd thrown away was coming back, and she was bringing their destruction with her. The river turned vicious on the 3rd day. Elira clung to the railing as the boat pitched sideways, water spraying across the deck in sheets. The nephew, his name was Finn, she'd learned, fought the wheel, cursing steadily under his breath. "Thought you said the river was calm this time of year," she shouted over the roar of the current. "It usually is." Finn hauled the wheel hard to port, avoiding a submerged log by inches. Something's wrong. Water's too high, too fast. Like there's been flooding upstream, but we haven't had rain in weeks. The boat lurched again, and Elira's stomach dropped. They'd made good progress the first 2 days, past the capital, past the outer settlements, into the wild borderlands where civilization thinned to scattered villages and dense forest. But now the river seemed determined to kill them. There! Finn pointed ahead to where the bank curved inward, creating a small cove. We can beach there. Wait it out. He wrestled the boat toward shore. It took both of them hauling on ropes to secure it, and by the time they finished, Elira's hands were raw and bleeding. How long do we wait? She asked. Finn studied the sky, the water, his weathered face troubled. Don't know. Could be hours, could be days. He glanced at her. You said you needed to get north fast. I do. Then you're not going to like this, but there's a land route through the Thornwood. Cuts about 50 miles off the river journey, brings you out near the border settlements. Why wouldn't I like that? Because nobody goes through the Thornwood if they can help it. Strange things in there. Old things. He pulled out a pipe, lighting it with shaking hands. But if speed matters more than safety, it's an option. Elira looked at the forest pressing close on all sides. Dark, dense, unwelcoming. Then she thought about Ronan, dying. Thought about Draven consolidating power. Thought about how every hour she delayed was an hour closer to losing everything. How do I find the path? Finn sighed. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He gave her directions. Follow the stream that fed into the river, look for the standing stones, keep the moss on your left. Old woodsman's wisdom that sounded half like navigation and half like superstition. One more thing, he said as she prepared to leave. If you see lights in the forest at night, don't follow them. No matter how pretty they are, no matter how much they look like they're leading somewhere safe, they're not. What are they? Nothing good. He handed her a small pack, dried fish, hard bread, a water skin. That's all I can spare. Travel fast, don't stop, and if you make it through, tell folks Finn's nephew tried to warn you. She took the pack, surprised by the weight of his kindness. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just survive. That's thanks enough. Elira left the boat behind and plunged into the thornwood. The forest swallowed her whole within minutes. The canopy overhead was so thick that even midday felt like dusk. The air was heavy, humid, filled with sounds she didn't recognize. Rustling that might be wind or might be something else, calls that might be birds or might not. She followed the stream like Finn had said, stepping carefully over roots and rocks. Her feet were still bare. She'd lost her shoes somewhere during the escape, and every step was agony on the uneven ground. But she kept moving. Hours blurred together. The stream widened, then narrowed, then split. She took the left fork, guessing, hoping, found the standing stones just before dark, ancient pillars covered in moss and carvings she couldn't read. This was the path. Had to be. She kept walking into the gathering darkness, because stopping meant camping, and camping meant being vulnerable. Better to move, even exhausted, even half-blind. The lights appeared around midnight. Elira saw them through the trees, soft, golden, warm as hearth fire. They bobbed and swayed, moving in patterns that seemed almost like beckoning. Come here, they seemed to say. Rest here. You're safe here. She remembered Finn's warning, didn't follow. The lights followed her instead. For an hour they paced her, staying just out of reach, always visible in her peripheral vision. Occasionally she'd hear something, laughter, music, voices calling her name. The sounds were beautiful, achingly so. She ignored them and kept walking. Eventually they faded, or gave up, or found easier prey. Dawn came gray and cold. Elira's legs were shaking with exhaustion, her feet bleeding freely now. She needed to rest, just for an hour, just to gather strength. She found a hollow between two massive tree roots and curled up inside it, the pack clutched to her chest. Sleep took her like drowning. She woke to voices. Told you we should have checked the western route, and I told you she'd go north. She's not stupid. Elira's eyes snapped open. Two men stood maybe 20 feet away, studying the ground, tracking her. Draven's men, had to be. She held perfectly still, barely breathing. They wore hunter's gear, not palace livery, but she recognized the insignia on their belts. Royal trackers, the best in the kingdom. "Lost the trail here," one of them said, frustrated. "Ground's too hard." "She can't be far. Woman alone in the thornwood? She's probably dead already." "Draven wants proof. We don't go back without a body." They split up, moving in different directions, searching. One of them came within 10 feet of her hiding spot. She could see the knife at his belt, the crossbow slung across his back. He paused, studying the trees. Elira didn't breathe. After an eternity, he moved on. She waited until she couldn't hear them anymore, then waited another hour to be sure. When she finally emerged, her whole body was cramping from staying so still. They were hunting her, actively hunting her, which meant her escape had been discovered, her absence noted, and Draven was taking no chances. She needed to move faster. Needed to reach the border before they found her. But she also needed rest, food, water. Her body was past exhausted, approaching the point where it would simply give out. There was a village, Finn had said, settlement near the border called Mill Haven. If she could reach it, she might find help, or at least supplies. Elira forced herself to stand, to start walking again. Every step was agony. Her vision swam. She'd eaten the last of the dried fish yesterday, and her stomach was a knot of hunger. The forest thinned gradually, the undergrowth giving way to worked land, fields, fences, signs of human habitation. She emerged onto a dirt road and followed it towards smoke rising in the distance. Millhaven was smaller than she'd expected. Maybe 20 buildings clustered around a crossroads. A inn, a blacksmith, a general store. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers were immediately noticed. She pulled her hood lower and headed for the inn. The common room went silent when she walked in. A dozen faces turned to stare. She felt their assessment, their suspicion. The innkeeper, a broad woman with steel-gray hair, looked her up and down. "We don't want trouble." "I'm not bringing any." Elira's voice came out hoarse. "I just need food and a place to sleep for a few hours." "You have money?" She pulled out what was left of the coins Marcus's sister had given her. The innkeeper took them, counted them, nodded. "Upstairs, second door on the left. I'll bring food up." The room was tiny, barely big enough for the narrow bed and washstand, but it felt like luxury after 3 days in the forest. Elira collapsed onto the mattress and was asleep before the innkeeper returned with the promised meal. She woke to shouting. Elira shot upright, heart racing. Below, in the common room, voices were raised, angry. She crept to the door, listening. "Don't care what the bounty is. I'm not turning anyone over to those bastards. 20 gold pieces. Do you know what we could do with 20 gold pieces? I know what we'd have to live with after. My answer's no." Bounty. They were arguing about a bounty. On her. Elira grabbed her pack, moving to the window. The room overlooked the back of the inn. Below there was a stable yard, a fence, open fields beyond. She could climb down. Could run. Could... The door burst open. The innkeeper stood there, breathless. "They're coming! Royal Guards! Someone sent word you were here." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Save it. I don't care why they want you, but I know tyranny when I see it." She thrust a bundle at Elira. "Food, clean clothes. There's a horse in the stable, brown mare, third stall. She's old, but she's steady. Take her. I can't pay you. Didn't ask you to. Now go before I change my mind." Elira went. She climbed out the window, dropped to the stable roof, slid down to the ground. Found the mare exactly where the innkeeper said. No saddle, no bridle, but horses didn't need those to run. She grabbed a handful of mane and hauled herself up just as shouting erupted from the front of the inn. The mare bolted without being asked, as if she understood the urgency. They crashed through the back fence and galloped into the fields beyond. Behind her, Elira heard the guards shouting, heard horses being readied for pursuit. She leaned low over the mare's neck and held on. They rode for hours. The mare was old, like the innkeeper had said, but she had heart. She ran until Elira could feel her flagging, her sides heaving. Finally, when they hit the forest on the far side of the fields, Elira pulled her to a stop. "Easy," she whispered, sliding off. "Easy, girl. You did good." The mare's legs were shaking. She'd given everything. Elira led her to a stream, let her drink, then tethered her loosely to a tree. If the guards found her, at least she could break free and run. Elira herself kept moving on foot. The border was close now. She could feel it in the way the air changed, colder and thinner. Could see it in the landscape, the hills rising higher, the vegetation shifting to hardy scrub. By nightfall, she reached the border settlements, a handful of homesteads clinging to the edge of civilization. Beyond them, the true wilderness. The territories where the king's law ended and older, stranger rules applied, where witches made their homes. She asked at the first homestead, an old man tending goats. "I'm looking for Morvana," she said. "The witch. Do you know where I can find her?" The old man spat. "Why would you want to find her?" "I need her help." "Nobody needs help that bad." But he pointed north toward the mountains. "There's a valley, 3 days' walk. The locals call it the Hollow. That's where she lives. But girl," he caught her arm as she turned to go. "People who go into the Hollow don't come back. You understand that?" "I understand." "And you're going anyway?" "I have to." He released her, shaking his head. "Then you're braver or stupider than most. Either way, I'll say a prayer for you." She thanked him and walked into the wilderness. The mountains rose like teeth against the sky. The path, if it could be called that, was little more than a game trail winding between rocks and thorny brush. Elira climbed, her breath coming harsh in the thin air. 3 days, the old man had said. She did it in 2, driven by desperation and the growing certainty that time was running out. Every hour that passed was an hour Ronan didn't have. Every delay was a death sentence written in slow motion. The hollow revealed itself at dawn on the 3rd day. She'd crested a ridge, and suddenly there it was below her, a valley carved deep into the mountains, its slopes covered in twisted trees that grew in patterns that hurt to look at. At the center, a lake that reflected nothing. And on the shore of that lake, a structure that might have been a house or might have been something else entirely. Morvana's lair. Elira descended into the valley. With every step, the air grew heavier, thicker. Magic, she realized. This place was saturated with it. The house was built from bones and black wood, its architecture defying geometry. Smoke rose from a chimney that seemed to exist in 2 places at once. The door stood open like it had been waiting for her. She walked through it. Inside, the house was larger than it should be. The walls were lined with shelves holding jars of things Elira didn't want to identify. A fire burned in a hearth that gave no heat. And in the center of the room, a woman sat spinning thread from shadow. Morvana was beautiful in the way poisonous things are beautiful. Ageless, with skin like porcelain and eyes like black glass. She didn't look up when Elira entered. "I've been expecting you," the witch said. Her voice was silk over razors. "You know who I am?" "Elira Voss, the barren queen, the woman who destroyed herself trying to save a dying king." Morvana's hands moved steadily, the shadow thread pooling at her feet. "You're here about the curse. I need you to break it." "No." The witch finally looked up, and her smile was terrible. "You need me to teach you how to break it yourself." Elira froze. "What?" "The curse I wove isn't mine to break. It's bound to your bloodline, your power. The ability runs in your family, girl, though they've hidden it for generations." Morvana stood, moving closer. "You have the gift of unbinding, of unraveling what's been tied. It's why the curse works the way it does. It feeds on your own suppressed power, turns it against the man you love." "That's impossible. I don't have any power. You were never barren. You were blocked. Your mother knew what you were, what you could become. So she poisoned you, yes, but not just to prevent pregnancy. She poisoned you to suppress your magic, to keep you weak and controllable." The witch circled her slowly. "But the magic never went away. It just went dormant. And when King Ronan started to truly love you, when the bond began to solidify, your power started to wake up. So they triggered the curse to kill him before you could realize what you are." Elira's head spun. Magic, power, unbinding. It sounded insane. Why would my mother hide this from me? Because an unbinder can dissolve any bond, any contract, any oath. You're dangerous to people who rely on control and coercion. Your mother built her power on careful alliances and binding agreements. You could destroy all of it with a thought, if you knew how. "Then teach me." Morvana laughed. "It's not that simple. The magic needs to be awakened properly, tested, proven, and there's a price. Name it. When you break this king's curse, you'll see the truth of it. See everyone who was involved, everyone who knew, everyone who helped weave the threads. That knowledge will burn, and you'll have to choose justice or mercy, vengeance or peace. The witch's eyes glittered. Choose wrong, and the magic will consume you, turn you into something worse than anything your enemies ever feared. I'll risk it. Will you? Morvanda moved to the hearth, pulling something from the flames, a knife that burned with cold fire. Then prove it. Give me 3 drops of your blood, freely given. Let me see if you're strong enough to survive what comes next. Elira held out her hand without hesitation. The witch cut her palm, blood welled up, black in the firelight. Morvana caught 3 drops in a crystal vial and held it up, studying it. Interesting, she murmured. You've got more strength than I expected. The poison should have killed the magic entirely, but you fought it, resisted it, kept a spark alive even when everything else was dying. Can you teach me? I can try. Whether you learn is up to you. Morvana set the vial aside. We have 3 days, maybe 4 if you're resilient. After that, your king dies and the curse becomes permanent. No unbinding will save him. Then we start now. The witch smiled, sharp and approving. You really do love him, don't you? Enough to walk into a monster's den. Enough to bleed for the chance to save him. How tragic. Why tragic? Because love is always what destroys us in the end. Morvana gestured to a circle carved into the floor. Stand there. Don't move, no matter what you see. Elira stepped into the circle. The witch began to chant. The world fractured. Elira saw herself from the outside, saw the curse wrapped around her like chains of shadow, saw it extending outward, connecting to Ronan across hundreds of miles, saw the poison in her blood, the blockages in her power, the suppression her mother had woven into her very bones, saw everything that had been done to her. Rage flooded through her, white-hot and pure. Good. Morvana's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Feel it. Let it burn, but don't let it control you. Rage is fuel, not master. Channel it. Focus it. Elira reached for the nearest shadow chain and pulled. It resisted. Held firm. She pulled harder, putting all her fury into it. The chain cracked. Pain exploded through her skull and she screamed but didn't let go. Pulled harder. Felt something inside her shift, wake up, roar to life. The chain shattered. She collapsed, gasping. Blood ran from her nose, her ears. The magic was tearing her apart from the inside. Again, Morvana said. There are dozens of chains. You need to break them all. I can't. You can. You will. Or you'll die here, and your king dies alone, and everyone who hurt you wins. The witch's voice was merciless. Again. Elira stood up, reached for the next chain, broke it, then the next, and the next. Each one was agony. Each one felt like dying, but each one also felt like freedom, like something fundamental being corrected, like becoming what she was always meant to be. By the time she shattered the last chain, 3 days had passed. She knew this because Morvana told her. She had no memory of time passing, only of breaking and bleeding and burning. She collapsed on the floor, every muscle screaming. It's done, the witch said. Your power is awake. Now you need to learn to use it. How? By practicing, by unmaking small things first. Morvana handed her a knotted rope. Unbind this, feel the pattern of it, the intention that holds it together, and unravel it. Elira took the rope, stared at it, felt nothing. Then she closed her eyes and looked deeper. The knot was there, existing as more than just physical loops of fiber. It was an intention made solid, a desire for binding made manifest. She touched that intention with her mind and gently, so gently, suggested it let go. The rope fell apart in her hands, unknotted as if it had never been tied at all. Good, Morvana said. Again, faster this time. They practiced for hours. Ropes, chains, locks, sealed jars, everything that was bound, Elira learned to unbind. Some things fought her. Some things surrendered easily. But by the end, she could dismantle complex bonds with a thought. Now, the witch said, the real test. She led Elira outside to the shore of the impossible lake, drew something in the dirt, a symbol Elira didn't recognize. This is a binding curse, and smaller than the one killing your king, but similar in structure. I'm going to place it on you, then you're going to break it. Morvana's expression was serious. If you fail, it will kill you. If you succeed, you'll know how to save him. Ready? Wait, you're going to curse me? How else will you learn to break a death curse except by breaking one? The witch's smile was cruel. This is the price, girl. Risk yourself to save him, or walk away and live. Elira thought about Ronan, about his hand extended toward her in the throne room, about his letter telling her to run toward the problem, not away, about everything they could be if they both survived this. Do it, she said. Morvana spoke words in a language that tasted like ash and old blood. The symbol on the ground began to glow. Pain lanced through Elira's chest. She looked down and saw shadow threads wrapping around her heart, squeezing. The curse. She could feel it activating, feel it beginning to kill her. Panic clawed at her throat. This was real. This was actually going to kill her. Focus. Feel the pattern. Find the intention. She closed her eyes and looked at the curse with her new sight. Saw how it was structured, how each thread connected to the next, how the whole thing was held together by a single anchor point. There. That's what she needed to unbind. She reached for it with her power. Still new, still clumsy, but present. The curse fought back, tightened, squeezed harder. Her vision went dark at the edges. Blood filled her mouth. No. She hadn't come this far to die now. Elira grabbed the anchor point with everything she had and pulled. The curse unraveled. It didn't shatter like the practice bindings. It unwound slowly, thread by thread, each one releasing with a whisper of dying magic. And as it came apart, she felt the intention behind it, the desire to harm, to kill, to bind someone to death. She pushed that intention away, rejected it, sent it back into the void it came from. The last thread dissolved and she gasped, air flooding back into her lungs. She'd done it. She'd broken a death curse. Adequate, Morvana said, and Elira realized the witch had been ready to intervene if she failed. You'll need to be faster when you face the real thing. The curse on your king is stronger, more complex. It's had 3 years to root itself into his life force. But now you know it's possible. Now you have the tools. Elira pushed herself upright. Her whole body shook. When do I leave? Now. Immediately. You've used up your time here. Morvana pulled a small vial from her robes. This is Shadow's bane. When you break the curse on your king, have him drink this. It will purge any residual poison from his system, give him strength to survive the shock of unbinding. Thank you. Don't thank me. I didn't do this for you. The witch's expression was unreadable. I did it because binding curses are an abomination. They corrupt the natural order. Your mother and Draven and whoever else was involved in this, they've twisted magic into something obscene. I want them punished for that. They will be. See that they are. Morvana turned away, heading back toward her impossible house. And girl, when you see the truth of who betrayed you, when the unbinding shows you every conspirator's face, remember what I said. Justice or vengeance. Choose carefully. Your power will magnify whichever path you pick. Then she was gone, disappearing into her house of bones and shadow. Elira stood alone on the shore of the lake that reflected nothing, holding a vial of poison cure and the knowledge of how to break curses. She'd done it. She'd found the witch, learned the magic, survived the training. Now she just had to get back to the capital before Ronan died. The journey back was faster. She knew the route now, knew which paths to take. She stole a horse from a border homestead. She'd send payment later, if she lived, and rode hard toward the capital. 2 days of constant riding. Her stolen horse went lame on the second day, and she abandoned it, ran on foot. Her new power sang in her veins, giving her strength beyond what her body should have, but it was burning through her fast. She reached the capital at midnight on the 8th day since her escape. The city was dark, locked down, guards at every gate. But guards and locks were just bindings, and bindings were what she unmade. Elira walked up to the river gate. The guards saw her coming, raised their weapons. Stop right there! She looked at the lock holding the gate closed, felt the intention behind it, to keep things closed, to prevent passage. She unbound it with a thought. The lock shattered. The gate swung open. The guards stared in shock. Elira walked through. She moved through the city like a ghost, unbinding every obstacle in her path. Locked doors, barred windows, chains across alleyways. Everything fell open before her. The palace loomed ahead. She could feel Ronan now, sense him through the curse that still connected them. He was weak, failing, dying, but not dead yet. She ran. The palace guards tried to stop her at the main entrance. She unbound their weapons, the straps holding their armor, the oaths of loyalty that held them in service. They fell back, confused and frightened. She burst through the doors into the main hall. Draven was there, halfway down the grand staircase, frozen in shock. "You," he breathed. "You're supposed to be dead." "Surprise," Elira said, and kept moving. He shouted for guards. They came running. She unbound them all, not their weapons this time, but their orders, the compulsion to obey, the chain of command itself. They stopped, uncertain, their loyalty suddenly their own choice instead of obligation. "Out of my way," she told them. They moved. She took the stairs 3 at a time, heading for the royal wing, for Ronan's chambers, for the man who was dying because he'd loved her. The doors to his room were sealed, locked, bound with magic she could feel even from here. Morvana's curse, the final trap. Elira pressed her hands against the wood and looked at it with her power. Saw the death curse woven into every fiber of the door, designed to kill anyone who tried to force entry, designed to keep her out. They'd underestimated what she'd become. She grabbed the curse and tore it apart. The door exploded inward. Inside, Ronan lay on the bed, pale as death. Physicians surrounded him, their faces masks of professional defeat. They looked up as she entered, shock written across their features. "Lady Voss!" She ignored them. Crossed to the bed. Looked down at the man she'd traveled across a kingdom to save. He was barely breathing. His skin had a grayish tinge, the curse wrapped around him like a shroud, visible to her new sight as chains of shadow and poison. "Everyone out," she said quietly. "We can't just... out. Now!" Something in her voice made them obey. They fled, leaving her alone with Ronan, his eyes open, just barely, focused on her with effort. "Elira?" His voice was thread-thin. "You're, alive?" "I'm alive, and I'm going to save you." She pulled out the vial Morvana had given her. "But first I need to break the curse. And Ronan..." She met his eyes. "This is going to hurt. Both of us. Don't care, just fix it." She placed her hands on his chest, over his heart, felt the curse there, rooted deep, feeding on the bond between them. This was it. The moment everything changed, Elira closed her eyes and looked at the curse with her power. It was massive, complex, beautiful in its cruelty, woven by Morvana's hand but powered by the conspirators' intention. And as she examined it, she saw them. Everyone who'd contributed, everyone who'd known, everyone who'd helped bind Ronan to death. Her mother, Cassandra, Draven, 3 council members, 2 physicians, a servant who'd administered the poison, a witch who'd woven the initial spell before Morvana refined it, and someone else, a face she recognized but couldn't place, someone who'd been there from the beginning, orchestrating everything. Captain Wren. The betrayal hit like a knife to the gut. Wren, who'd given her the escape route, who'd told her about Morvana, who'd helped her get away so she'd lead them to the solution and bring it back so they could what? She'd find out later. Right now, Ronan was dying. Elira grabbed the curse's anchor point and pulled. It fought her like nothing she'd faced before. Fought with 3 years of accumulated power, with the combined will of everyone who'd woven it, with the weight of intention to harm and kill and destroy. She pulled harder. Blood ran from her nose, her ears, her eyes. The magic tore at her from the inside. The curse shrieked as it came apart, and she felt Ronan convulsing beneath her hands. Almost there. The anchor point cracked. The entire curse began to unravel, and as it did, it showed her everything, every meeting, every decision, every moment of the conspiracy. Showed her Captain Wren approaching her mother with the plan. Showed her Draven agreeing to play his part. Showed her the moment they decided killing Ronan wasn't enough. They had to destroy Elira too, make her the villain, erase them both. showed her that it had never been about the throne. It had been about power, about creating enough chaos that the kingdom would beg for strong leadership, about installing a puppet ruler and controlling them from the shadows. Cassandra was the puppet, but Ren was the puppet master. The last thread of the curse dissolved. Ronan gasped, his back arching off the bed. Elira grabbed the vial and forced it between his lips, making him drink. The shadow's bane did its work. Color flooded back into his face. His breathing steadied. He was alive. She'd saved him. Elira collapsed beside the bed, power spent, body broken, but triumphant. The door burst open. Guards flooded in. Real guards this time, wearing Captain Ren's insignia. And at their head, the captain himself, his face a mask of false concern. "Lady Voss," he said smoothly, "you've returned and broken quarantine. I'm afraid I'll have to place you under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder," Elira said, pushing herself upright. "For treason. For trying to kill your king." His expression didn't change. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." She stood, swaying but steady. "I saw you. When I broke the curse, I saw everyone involved. Every face, every betrayal. I know what you did. The ravings of a woman driven mad by—" "She's not mad." Ronan's voice cut through the room, weak but growing stronger by the second. "She's telling the truth." Ren's mask finally cracked, just for a second, but Elira saw the flash of rage, of calculation. "Even if your accusations were true, which they're not, you have no proof. No witnesses. Just the word of a disgraced consort and a sick king." His smile was cold. "And I have 50 loyal men who'll swear I was nowhere near any conspiracy." "Loyal?" Elira laughed, bitter and sharp. "You really don't understand what I can do you?" She reached out with her power and found the oaths binding Ren's guards to him, found the threads of loyalty and obedience and duty, and unbound them all. 50 men suddenly stood free of compulsion, free to choose their own loyalty, free to remember every order they'd questioned, every moment they'd suspected something was wrong, free to remember that their oath was to the king, not to Captain Ren. They lowered their weapons. Ren's face went pale. What did you— "I gave them back their free will, something you took from them when you bound them with false oaths and corrupted magic." Elira stepped toward him. "You tried to kill my king, tried to frame me, tried to destroy everything. And for what? Power? Control?" "For the kingdom," Ren snarled, the mask finally shattering completely. "For stability and order and strength. Ronan is weak, too merciful, too idealistic. He would have led us into chaos. We needed someone strong enough to make the hard choices, to do what must be done. By murdering your king and framing an innocent woman? By saving the realm from itself." He lunged toward her, knife appearing in his hand from nowhere. Elira caught his wrist with her power, held him frozen, mid-strike. "You're under arrest," Ronan said from the bed, his voice steady now. "For treason, conspiracy, attempted murder of the crown." He looked at his former captain with something like grief. "I trusted you." "You were a fool to," Ren spat, "just like your father. Too soft, too weak. This kingdom needed someone with vision. It needed someone with honor." Ronan's eyes were hard. "Take him. Lock him in the deepest cell we have and find everyone else involved. Every conspirator, every traitor. Bring them all to justice." The guards, free now to choose their own loyalty, grabbed Ren and dragged him away, his protests echoing down the corridor. Silence fell over the room. Elira and Ronan looked at each other. "You came back," he said quietly. "I told you I would. I told you not to. Told you to save yourself. When have I ever done what I'm told?" She moved to the bed, sitting beside him. "How do you feel?" "Like I died and came back." He caught her hand. "What did you find? Out there?" "Everything. Magic. Power. The truth about what I am." She met his eyes. "And everyone who betrayed us. Ren. And others. My mother. Cassandra. 3 council members. 2 physicians." She squeezed his hand. "I saw them all. Every face. Every betrayal. The unbinding showed me everything." "Then we know who to arrest." "We do." She paused. But Ronan, there's something else. Morvana said when I saw the truth, I'd have to choose justice or vengeance, and that my power would magnify whichever path I picked. He studied her face. Which are you choosing? Elira thought about her mother's calculating eyes, about Cassandra's smug smile, about Draven's false sympathy and Wren's betrayal, about 3 years of poison and lies and systematic destruction. She thought about the woman who'd knelt in the throne room, accepting shame she didn't deserve, and about the woman who'd walked into a witch's lair and come out transformed. I'm choosing truth, she said finally. Public trials. Every conspirator named and judged, every crime exposed. Let the kingdom see what they did. Let history remember their names as traitors and murderers. That's justice. It is, but her grip tightened on his hand. I want them to suffer. Want them to feel every bit of shame and pain they put me through. Want them destroyed so completely there's nothing left. Is that vengeance? It's human. Ronan pulled her closer. You're allowed to be angry, allowed to want them punished. That doesn't make you a monster. Morvana said if I choose wrong, the power will consume me, turn me into something worse than them. Then we'll make sure you don't choose wrong. We'll do this together. Justice, not vengeance. Truth, not cruelty. He touched her face gently. You saved me. Now let me help save you from becoming what they tried to make you. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, and full of everything they'd almost lost. When they broke apart, Ronan was smiling. What? She asked. You broke a death curse, escaped prison, crossed a kingdom, faced down a witch, learned magic, and came back to save me. His smile widened. You're terrifying. I hope you know that. Good. Let them all be terrified. She stood, straightening her ruined clothes. Because we're not done. Not until every traitor is exposed. Not until the kingdom knows the truth. Then let's expose them. Can you stand? Watch me. Ronan pushed himself upright. His legs shook, but he stayed standing. Elira offered her arm, and he took it. Together, they walked out of the room where he'd almost died. And somewhere in the dungeons below, Captain Wren realized he'd made a terrible mistake. He'd underestimated the woman he'd tried to destroy. And now she was coming for everyone who'd hurt her. Not as the Barren Queen, not as the woman who stepped aside, but as something new, something powerful, something that couldn't be stopped. The palace would burn before morning, and from its ashes a new kingdom would rise. The council chamber had never been so quiet. Elira stood at the center of it, Ronan at her side, facing the 11 remaining council members who hadn't been arrested yet. Word of Captain Wren's betrayal had spread through the palace like wildfire, and now everyone was calculating, reassessing, trying to figure out which side to land on before the ground disappeared completely. Chancellor Draven sat at the far end of the table, his face a carefully constructed mask of shock and concern. He was good. She'd give him that. If she hadn't seen his face in the curses unraveling, hadn't watched him agree to poison both her and Ronan, she might have believed the act. Your Majesty, Draven said, his voice trembling just enough to sound genuine. We are all horrified by Captain Wren's betrayal. To think that he was behind this conspiracy. He wasn't behind it, Elira said quietly. The room went still. I'm sorry? Draven's mask flickered. Captain Wren was a conspirator, a major one, but he wasn't the architect. She let her gaze sweep the room, watching faces, watching who looked away. The curse I broke showed me everything, every meeting, every decision, every person involved, and it showed me who came up with the plan in the first place. Draven's expression didn't change, but his knuckles went white where he gripped the table. Who? Councillor Marin asked. The old woman looked genuinely shaken. Lady Voss, if you know who orchestrated this, you must tell us immediately. I will, in court, during a public trial where every citizen of this kingdom can hear the truth. Elira kept her voice level, calm. Because this conspiracy wasn't just about killing the king and framing me. It was about destabilizing the entire kingdom, creating enough chaos that people would beg for strong leadership. That's what you wanted, wasn't it, Chancellor? Draven stood slowly. This is slander. This is truth, and you're terrified of it. She took a step toward him. You recruited my mother. You brought Captain Wren into the plan. You convinced the others that Ronan was too weak to rule, that I was too barren to be useful, that the kingdom needed someone who understood how power really works. I have served this kingdom for 20 years. You've served yourself. Ronan's voice cut through the room like a blade. And now you're going to face justice for it. Guards appeared in the doorway, Marcus among them, his face set with grim determination. Chancellor Draven, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, treason against the crown, and corruption of royal authority. Draven looked around the table, seeking allies, found none. Everyone was suddenly very interested in the wood grain, the ceiling, anywhere but his face. You have no proof, he said, but his voice had lost its steadiness. The word of one woman who claims to have seen visions while breaking a curse, that's not evidence, that's fantasy. Then let's test it, Elira said. I saw 12 people involved in this conspiracy. I can name them all right now, and we'll see how fantasy holds up against arrest records and interrogations. She pulled a paper from her sleeve. She'd written down every name while waiting for this meeting, her hand shaking with barely suppressed rage. Chancellor Draven, Captain Wren, Lady Thorne, my mother, Cassandra Voss, my stepsister, Counselors Brent, Holloway, and Stroud. She looked up, meeting their eyes one by one as she named them. The three men had gone pale, their faces slack with shock at being exposed. Court physicians Myrick and Chellis. The servant girl who administered the poison to the king's wine, Dessa, though she probably thought she was just following orders. The hedge witch who wove the initial curse before Morvana refined it. A woman named Kira who lives in the eastern quarter. She paused, taking in the stunned silence. And one more, someone I didn't see clearly in the vision, but whose involvement I can deduce from the pattern. She looked at Counselor Brent. Your wife. She was the one who introduced my mother to the hedge witch. She's the connection that made all of this possible. Brent's face crumpled. How did you? Because curses leave traces, and when you unbind them, you see everything. Elira folded the paper carefully. 12 conspirators, all working together to destroy their king and install a puppet ruler. That's not fantasy, Chancellor. That's treason. Marcus stepped forward. Sir, please come with us. Draven didn't move. For a long moment, Elira thought he might actually fight, might try to use whatever magic or influence he had left. Then his shoulders slumped. The mask finally, completely shattered. You don't understand what you've done, he said quietly, looking at Ronan. The kingdom needs strength, needs someone willing to make the hard choices. You're too soft, too idealistic. You'll destroy everything trying to be fair. Better that than become what you are, Ronan said. They took Draven away. The three counselors followed, Brent, Holloway, and Stroud, all of them protesting their innocence, even as the evidence stacked against them. The room felt lighter without them, like a poison had been drained. What now? Counselor Marin asked. She looked old suddenly, tired. Half the council is under arrest. The kingdom is in chaos. How do we even begin to fix this? We start with the truth, Ronan said. Public trials for everyone involved. No closed proceedings, no backroom deals. Let the people see what was done in their name. That could take months, and in the meantime, we govern. We make decisions. We show the kingdom that despite everything, we're still here, still standing, still fighting for them. He glanced at Elira. Together. Marin's eyes moved between them, calculating. The people still believe Lady Voss is barren, believe she used dark magic to ensnare you. You'll need to address that directly, or the rumors will never stop. Then we'll address it, Elira said. Tonight, at the public assembly. Are you certain? The people are angry. They might... Let them be angry. They have a right to be. They've been lied to for 3 years. Someone needs to tell them the truth, and it might as well be us. The assembly hall could hold 5,000 people when packed tight. By the time Elira and Ronan arrived that evening, it was overflowing, people crammed into every available space, with more crowding the streets outside. They wanted answers, wanted to know why their king had nearly died, why the court was in chaos, why half the council was under arrest. Elira stood backstage, her hands shaking. She'd faced down a witch, broken a death curse, escaped prison, but standing in front of thousands of angry people and telling them she'd been poisoned for 3 years felt more terrifying than all of that combined. You don't have to do this, Ronan said quietly. I can speak for both of us. No, They need to hear it from me. Need to know I'm not hiding, not ashamed, not broken. She squeezed his hand. I can do this. I know you can. You've done everything else. They walked out onto the stage together. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some booing, everyone shouting something. Elira forced herself to keep walking, to keep her head up, to look out at the sea of faces judging her. Ronan raised his hand and the crowd slowly, reluctantly quieted. Citizens of the realm, he said, his voice carrying across the vast space. You deserve the truth. All of it. No more secrets, no more lies. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, and then you can decide for yourselves what to believe. He laid it out simply, methodically. The poisoning, the conspiracy, the curse designed to kill him when he fell in love, the systematic destruction of Elira's reputation to pave the way for a puppet ruler. For 3 years, he said, his voice hard, you were told that Lady Elira Voss was barren, that she had failed in her duty, that she was cursed, broken, worthless, and I'm here to tell you that every word of that was a lie. The crowd stirred, uncertain. She was poisoned, Ronan continued, deliberately, systematically, by people I trusted, people you trusted, because she was never barren. She was blocked, suppressed, made to believe she was broken when the truth was she was being destroyed from the inside. Elira stepped forward. Her voice shook when she spoke, but she pushed through it. I knelt before you all 8 days ago and accepted shame I didn't deserve. I stepped aside because I thought I was protecting the kingdom, because I believed the lie they'd fed me for 3 years. She met the eyes of the people in the front rows. But I'm done kneeling, done accepting blame for crimes committed against me, and I'm done letting powerful people rewrite the truth to suit their ambitions. Someone in the crowd shouted, How do we know you're telling the truth? Fair question. Expected question. Because I can prove it, Elira said. The physicians who examined me, who declared me barren, 2 of them have already confessed to falsifying their reports under pressure from Chancellor Draven. The tea I drank every morning for 3 years has been tested and found to contain herbs specifically designed to prevent pregnancy. And the curse that nearly killed your king, she paused, gathering courage. I broke it myself, using magic I didn't know I had until a week ago. The crowd erupted again. Magic was feared, mistrusted, especially in the hands of women. I'm an unbinder, she said, pushing through the noise. It's a rare gift, runs in certain bloodlines. My mother knew about it and spent my entire life suppressing it because unbinders are dangerous to people who rely on control and coercion. But when the curse activated and started killing Ronan, I learned how to use my power, learned how to break bindings and curses and oaths. And when I shattered the death curse, I saw everyone involved, every conspirator, every traitor. That's how we know who to arrest. That's how we know the truth. She's a witch, someone screamed from the back. No, Ronan said firmly. She's gifted. There's a difference. Witches weave curses. Elira breaks them. She saved my life using the very power my enemies tried to suppress. And I'm not going to stand here and let you call her monster for refusing to let me die. The crowd was divided now, people arguing amongst themselves. Elira could see the split. Some believed them, some didn't. Most were still trying to decide. I know you're scared, she said. I know this is a lot to process. But I'm asking you to think. To really think. Does it make sense that a healthy young woman would be completely barren for 3 years with no medical explanation? Does it make sense that the king would suddenly fall deathly ill, right when questions about succession were becoming urgent? Does it make sense that the solution they offered was to remove me and install my stepsister, who just happens to be the daughter of the woman who sent me poisoned tea every morning? She saw comprehension dawning on some faces, saw people connecting the dots. Or does it make more sense that powerful people wanted to control the throne and we were in their way? The silence that fell was different now, thoughtful instead of hostile. Counselor Marin stepped onto the stage. Elira hadn't known she was there, but she was grateful for it. The old woman's presence carried weight. I have served on the High Council for 30 years, Marin said. I have watched 3 kings rule and seen more court politics than most of you can imagine. And I am here to tell you that Lady Voss speaks the truth. She looked at Elira with something like respect. I didn't believe her at first. I thought the allegations of poisoning were paranoid fantasy, but the evidence is undeniable. The tea was poisoned, the curse was real, the conspiracy existed, and this young woman, she gestured to Elira, walked into hell itself to save her king and break a death curse. If that's not loyalty, I don't know what is. The crowd began to shift. Elira could feel it, the slow turn from suspicion to something else. Not quite acceptance, not yet, but possibility. The trials will be public, Ronan said. Every piece of evidence will be presented openly. You'll hear testimony from the conspirators themselves, and when it's over, you can make your own judgment. But until then, I'm asking you to give us a chance, give the truth a chance. He reached for Elira's hand, holding it up between them. This is my consort, my partner. The woman who refused to give up on me even when everyone told her to, and I'm not letting her go. Not for politics, not for optics, not for anything. The crowd was silent now, watching. So if you can't accept her, Ronan continued, his voice quiet but carrying, then you can't accept me. Because we're a pair now, bound not by curses or politics, but by choice. And that bond is stronger than any magic the conspirators could throw at us. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then someone in the middle of the crowd started clapping. It was tentative at first, uncertain, but others joined in. Then more. Then whole sections of the crowd. Not everyone. Some people still looked angry, suspicious. Some turned and left. But enough people were clapping that Elira felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been knotted tight since the day she'd knelt in the throne room. They were being heard, being believed. It wasn't total victory, but it was a start. Ronan pulled her close, and she let herself lean into him, drawing strength from his presence. We did it, he murmured against her hair. We survived, she corrected. The real work starts tomorrow. The trials began 3 days later. They'd set up the proceedings in the main square, out in the open where everyone could watch. Scaffolding and seating for witnesses and the accused. A raised platform for the judges, 5 of them, chosen from the remaining untainted council members and respected citizens. The first to face trial was Captain Wren. He stood in chains, his face a mask of contempt, while the charges were read. Conspiracy to commit murder, treason, corruption of the king's guard. The list went on. How do you plead? The lead judge asked. Guilty, Wren said, and the crowd gasped. Guilty of trying to save this kingdom from a weak king and his corrupting whore. Ronan's hand tightened on the armrest of his seat, but he didn't rise to the bait. The evidence against you is overwhelming, the judge continued. Multiple witnesses place you at meetings with the other conspirators. Your own men have testified to strange orders, suspicious activities, and the unbinding performed by Lady Voss revealed your involvement directly. Do you deny any of this? I deny nothing. I did what needed to be done. Wren looked at Ronan with something like pity. You're too soft, too merciful. You would have led us to ruin. I was trying to prevent that. By murdering me? By removing a threat to stability. Wren's voice was calm, rational. Personal feelings aside, you're a liability. The kingdom needs strength, not sentiment. The kingdom needs justice, one of the judges said sharply. Not murder dressed up as duty. They deliberated for less than an hour. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, execution. Elira watched as they led Wren away. She'd expected to feel triumph, satisfaction. Instead, she just felt tired, empty. 1 down, Ronan murmured beside her. 11 to go. The trials continued over the following week. The 3 counselors tried to claim they'd been coerced, that they hadn't known the full extent of the conspiracy. The evidence contradicted them at every turn. Guilty. All 3. The 2 physicians claimed they'd been following orders, that they'd feared for their lives if they didn't comply. The court showed some mercy there, reduced sentences, exile instead of execution. They were pawns, the judges decided, complicit, but not architects. The servant girl, Dessa, broke down sobbing on the stand. She'd been threatened, she said, told her family would be killed if she didn't put the powder in the wine. The judges believed her. Acquitted, with a warning. The hedge witch, Kira, was harder to find. It took Marcus and his guards 3 days to track her down in the eastern quarter. When they finally brought her in, she was defiant. I cast the spell I was paid to cast, she said flatly. That's my trade. What people do with my work isn't my concern. You wove a curse designed to kill the king, the lead judge said. That doesn't concern you. I wove a curse designed to kill anyone who completed a specific type of bond. I didn't know who the target was, didn't ask. That's how this works. I provide the magic. The customer provides the target. It was a weak defense, but there was some truth to it. The judges debated for hours before finally settling on a sentence, 20 years imprisonment and a binding to prevent her from casting curses ever again. Elira watched as they placed the binding, a collar of spelled metal that would block her magic. Watched the witch's face go slack with loss. She understood that feeling, understood having something essential stripped away. But she also understood that some prices had to be paid. Then came the day they'd all been waiting for, Lady Thorne's trial. Elira's mother walked into the square like she was attending a garden party, her head high, her dress immaculate. She showed no fear, no shame, just cold calculation. The charges were read: poisoning, conspiracy, suppression of magical gifts, attempted murder of the king by proxy. How do you plead? The judge asked. Not guilty, Lady Thorne said calmly. The crowd erupted. Everyone had seen the evidence, had heard the testimony. Not guilty? The judge repeated. I acted in the best interests of my daughter and the kingdom, Lady Thorne said. Everything I did was to protect. You poisoned me for 3 years, Elira cut in, standing from her seat. Don't pretend that was protection. Her mother's eyes finally met hers, cold, hard, unrepentant. I prevented you from making a fool of yourself, from embarrassing the family with your weakness. My weakness or my power? Your so-called power is an abomination, an insult to the natural order. Lady Thorne's voice dripped with contempt. I spent your entire life trying to suppress it, to make you normal, to give you a chance at a real future, and you thank me by destroying everything I built. You didn't suppress it for my benefit. You did it for yours, because an unbinder threatens your carefully constructed alliances, your binding contracts, your control. Elira stepped down from the platform, moving closer. You were afraid of what I could become, so you tried to kill it before it could wake up. I tried to save you from yourself. You tried to erase me. Elira's voice was steady now. All the fear and shame burned away. But I'm still here, still standing, and you're the one in chains. Her mother's facade finally cracked. You self-righteous little— Enough, the lead judge said. Lady Thorne, the evidence against you is substantial. Multiple witnesses. Physical proof of the poisoning. Testimony from the hedge witch confirming you commissioned the initial curse. Do you have anything to say in your own defense? I did what any mother would do to protect her child from a dangerous gift. By poisoning her? By conspiring to murder her king? By trying to frame her for dark magic? The judge shook his head. That's not protection. That's abuse dressed up as maternal concern. The verdict came faster than the others. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, life imprisonment, all titles and land stripped, her name stricken from the family records. Lady Thorne didn't flinch, didn't beg, just looked at Elira with cold, unending hatred. You'll regret this, she said as they led her away. You think you've won, but all you've done is paint a target on your back. There are others who understand what you are, what you could become, and they'll come for you eventually. Let them come, Elira said quietly. I'm not hiding anymore. Cassandra's trial was scheduled for the next day, but she never made it to the square. They found her that morning in her cell, hanging from a bedsheet tied to the window bars. She'd left no note, no explanation. Elira stood in the cell doorway, looking at her stepsister's body, and felt nothing. No grief, no satisfaction, just emptiness. She chose this, Ronan said beside her. Chose it over facing what she'd done. Or over living with the consequences. Elira turned away. Either way, it's over. But it wasn't. Not quite. Chancellor Draven's trial was the last and the longest. He brought lawyers, witnesses, documents. He fought every charge, contested every piece of evidence, turned the proceedings into a circus. It took 3 days of testimony before the judges finally had enough. Chancellor Draven, the lead judge said, exhaustion evident in his voice. "You have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, treason against the crown, corruption of office, and abuse of power. Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Draven stood slowly. He'd lost weight during his imprisonment, his clothes hanging loose, but his eyes were still sharp, still calculating. "I have one thing to say." He looked at Ronan. "You think this is over? Think you've won because you caught us? This was just the first attempt. There will be others. The kingdom doesn't want a weak king who rules by sentiment and mercy. They want strength, order. And eventually, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually they'll realize you can't give them that. And when they do, someone else will finish what I started." "Perhaps," Ronan said. "Or perhaps they'll realize that strength without mercy is just tyranny, and tyranny always falls in the end. We'll see." The sentence was execution, scheduled for 3 days hence. The night before Draven's execution, Elira couldn't sleep. She stood in the palace gardens watching the stars and thinking about everything that had happened, everything she'd lost, everything she'd gained. "You should rest," Ronan said, appearing beside her. "Tomorrow will be difficult. Tomorrow is just the end of one chapter, the beginning of another." She leaned against him. "Are you ready for what comes next? Rebuilding, governing, trying to heal a kingdom that's been torn apart by conspiracy?" He laughed quietly. "No, absolutely not. But I'm going to do it anyway." "We're going to do it," she corrected. "Together." "Together," he agreed. Then, after a pause, "Elira, there's something I need to ask you." She looked up at him. "What?" "The bond, the one the curse was tied to. It's still there. I can feel it. Can you?" She could. Since breaking the curse, she'd been aware of him in a way she hadn't before. Could sense his emotions, his presence, even when they were apart. "I feel it," she said. "That bond, it's not complete. Not yet. Morvana said the curse activated when we started to truly connect, but it killed the process before it could finish." He took her hands. "I want to complete it, properly, without curses or poison or conspiracies hanging over us. Just you and me choosing each other freely." Her heart hammered. "Ronan, I'm not asking for an answer now, just think about it. Once the trials are over, once things settle, we could have a proper ceremony. Complete the bond. Make it permanent." He smiled. "Make you actually queen instead of just consort. I don't care about titles. I know, but I care about you, and I want the kingdom to know that you're not just someone who happened to be here. You're the person I chose, the person who saved my life, the person I want beside me for whatever comes next." Elira thought about the woman who'd knelt in the throne room 8 days ago. Thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd changed. Thought about the power sleeping in her veins, the magic she was only beginning to understand. Thought about a future where she wasn't just surviving, but thriving, building, creating something new. "Ask me again," she said, "when this is over, when we've rebuilt what they tried to destroy, when we've proven that love and loyalty are stronger than curses and conspiracy." "And what will you say?" She smiled. "You'll have to ask to find out." The execution took place at dawn. The entire capital turned out to watch. Elira stood beside Ronan on the platform, forcing herself to witness what her choices had wrought. Draven walked to the block with his head high. He didn't beg, didn't recant, just knelt and waited. The executioner raised his axe. Elira wanted to look away, wanted to be anywhere but here, watching a man die because she'd exposed his crimes. But she forced herself to watch, to bear witness, to own the consequences of choosing justice over mercy. The axe fell. It was over. The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then someone started cheering, then more. Then the whole square erupted in noise, some celebrating, some mourning, everyone processing in their own way. Ronan took Elira's hand and they walked down from the platform together. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. "Like something ended, and like something else is beginning." She looked at him. "Is that strange?" "No, that's exactly right." They returned to the palace to find it transformed. Someone, probably Marcus and his people, had cleaned the throne room, removed all evidence of the conspirators, restored it to what it had been before. But it wasn't the same. It would never be the same. Too much had happened. Too much had changed. Ronan sat on the throne and pulled Elira down beside him, not in the consort's chair, but sharing the throne itself. "This is irregular," she said. "Everything about us is irregular." He kissed her temple. "Might as well embrace it." Counselor Marin appeared in the doorway with the remaining council members, those who'd survived the purge, plus some new faces appointed to fill the gaps. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing, "the council is assembled and ready to discuss reconstruction efforts." "Good. Let's begin." Ronan gestured them forward. "We have a kingdom to rebuild." They worked through the afternoon and into the evening, laying out plans for reforms, for investigations into other potential corruption, for ways to prevent this kind of conspiracy from happening again. Elira contributed where she could, her unbinding gift giving her insight into which oaths and contracts were genuine and which were coerced or corrupted. By the time they finished, the sun had set and candles lit the chamber. "One more thing," Marin said as the others filed out. "The people are asking about succession, about heirs, given everything that's happened." "We're aware," Ronan said, "and we'll address it. But not today. Today we focus on healing what's broken. The future can wait." Marin nodded, satisfied, and left them alone. Elira stood, stretching muscles that ached from sitting too long. "She's right, though. Eventually we'll need to—" "Eventually," Ronan interrupted. "But not now. Right now, I just want to be here with you. No curses, no conspiracies, no one trying to kill us. Just this." She moved to him, letting him pull her close. They stood together in the throne room, surrounded by the weight of history and the promise of tomorrow. "We survived," she said quietly. "We did more than survive. We won." He tilted her face up. "Against impossible odds, against a conspiracy that should have destroyed us, we won. What do we do now? Now we prove that we deserve to win. We rebuild, we reform, we show them that mercy and strength aren't opposites, that justice and compassion can coexist." He smiled. "We become the rulers this kingdom actually needs." That's a lot of pressure. Good thing we're not doing it alone. She kissed him then, fierce and grateful and full of hope for the first time in years. When they finally broke apart, Ronan was grinning. "What?" she asked. "I'm just thinking, 8 days ago, you were kneeling in this room accepting disgrace. Now you're standing here having saved the kingdom and exposed the greatest conspiracy in our history." His grin widened. "They really should have known better than to underestimate you. They thought I was broken, easy to discard. They were idiots." She laughed, surprised by the sound. When was the last time she'd laughed freely? Before the poisoning, before the shame, before everything. "Come on," Ronan said, pulling her toward the door. "Let's get out of here. I'm tired of throne rooms and councils and the weight of crowns." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere no one can find us, where we can just be Ronan and Elira, not king and consort, where we can remember what we're fighting for." They slipped out of the palace through the same servants' corridors Elira had used to escape, made their way to the city streets, both of them pulling hoods low to avoid recognition. The capital was alive with energy. People celebrating in the streets, toasting the conspiracy's end, telling stories about the trials. Elira heard her own name mentioned, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with suspicion, but always with recognition. She wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't dismissed. They found a small tavern tucked away from the main squares, went inside, ordered wine and bread, and sat in a corner, just 2 people among many. "To survival," Ronan said, raising his cup. "To more than survival," Elira corrected. "To victory, to truth, to justice. To us," he added. They drank, and for the first time in 3 years, Elira felt something that might have been peace. It wouldn't last. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, more people who wanted to see them fail. But right now, in this moment, they had won. They had exposed the conspiracy, broken the curse, survived the trials. They had proven that love and loyalty were stronger than poison and politics. And tomorrow, they would start building something new from the ashes of what had burned. But tonight, they were just 2 people who'd found each other in the darkness and refused to let go. And that was enough. The peace lasted exactly 2 weeks. Elira was in the council chamber reviewing proposed reforms when Marcus burst through the door, his face pale and urgent. "Your Majesty, Lady Voss, we have a situation." Ronan looked up from the documents he'd been studying. What kind of situation? The eastern provinces. Lord Garrett has declared the trials illegal. He's claiming the king acted under enchantment and all verdicts should be overturned. Marcus set a sealed letter on the table. He's rallying support. Says he won't pay taxes or send troops until you prove you're not under Lady Voss's magical influence. Silence crashed over the room. Elira felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the same one she'd felt kneeling in the throne room, the same one that had followed her through 3 years of poison and shame. They were doing it again, questioning her, blaming her, making her the problem. How many provinces are backing him? Councillor Marin asked. 3 so far, maybe more. Marcus looked grim. He's framing it as concern for the king's welfare. Says Lady Voss used her unbinding magic to break the king's will, make him dependent on her. That's insane, Ronan said flatly. I was dying. She saved my life. He's saying you only think she saved you, that the magic corrupted your perception, made you believe you needed her. Marcus pulled out another document. He's even got a physician, one who wasn't involved in the conspiracy, willing to testify that unbinding magic could theoretically be used to manipulate bonds, not just break curses. Elira's hands curled into fists under the table. Of course they'd find a way to twist her power into something sinister, find a way to make saving Ronan's life look like enslaving him. What does Garrett want? She asked quietly. He wants you removed from court, exiled, and he wants the king to marry someone of noble blood to prove he's free of your influence. Marcus's expression was apologetic. I'm sorry, I know It's politics, Elira interrupted. It's powerful men who don't like the idea of a woman with actual power standing beside the throne. She looked at Ronan. What are you going to do? I'm going to ignore him. Let him pout in his province. He'll come around eventually. And if he doesn't? If more provinces join him? Marin leaned forward. Your Majesty, I understand your loyalty to Lady Voss, but we can't afford a rebellion right now. The kingdom is still recovering from the conspiracy. We need stability. Exiling Elira won't bring stability. It'll just prove that anyone with enough influence can force the king's hand. Ronan's voice was hard. I'm not giving in to this. Then what? We go to war with our own provinces? If necessary. The room erupted, counselors arguing, shouting over each other, everyone with an opinion about what should be done. Elira stood quietly and walked out. She made it to the gardens before Ronan caught up with her. Elira, wait! You can't go to war over me, she said without turning around. You know that, right? You can't tear the kingdom apart because Lord Garrett and his allies are scared of what I represent. I'm not tearing anything apart. They are, by refusing to accept that you're not a threat. But I am a threat. She finally faced him. That's the truth they're dancing around. I can unbind oaths, break contracts, dissolve alliances held together by binding magic. I'm dangerous to everyone who relies on those things to maintain power. She laughed bitterly. My mother understood that. That's why she spent my whole life suppressing my gifts. And now that it's awake, now that people know what I can do, they're terrified. Oh, so what are you saying? That you should leave? Let them win? I'm saying maybe they're right to be scared. Maybe I haven't fully thought through what it means to have this power, what I could do with it, what I should do with it. Ronan caught her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. You saved my life. You exposed a conspiracy that would have destroyed this kingdom. You broke a curse that should have been impossible to break. And you did all of it not because you wanted power, but because you refused to let innocent people suffer. His grip tightened. That's why you're not a threat, because you could use your power to control and dominate, but instead you use it to free and protect. That's the difference. That's why I trust you. Why the kingdom should trust you. The kingdom doesn't know me. They just know I have magic they don't understand. Then we show them. We prove that your power is about liberation, not control. We make them understand. How? He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then his expression shifted, a plan forming. Lord Garrett's eastern provinces, they're held together by binding contracts, right? Forced oaths and coerced alliances that keep the smaller lords under his thumb. Elira nodded slowly. That's how most of the provincial lords maintain control. Make deals with magic binding them so people can't break their word even if they want to. What if you went there, to the eastern provinces, and offered to unbind anyone who wanted freedom from coerced contracts, anyone who'd been forced into oaths they didn't truly want? Ronan's eyes were bright now, excited. Show them what your power actually does. Show them that you're not about control. You're about choice. Garrett would never allow it. Garrett doesn't get to decide. You'd be there as my representative, acting under royal authority. He can refuse to pay taxes, but he can't stop you from traveling through his lands and talking to his people. Ronan smiled, sharp and calculating. And when they realize you're offering freedom instead of demanding submission, when they see what you can actually do, Garrett's authority falls apart. Because it was built on forced loyalty, not earned respect. It was brilliant. Risky, but brilliant. He could have me killed, Elira pointed out. He could try. But you'd have royal guards with you. And the moment he attacks a representative of the crown, he commits treason. Either way, we win. Elira thought about it. Thought about traveling to the place where people feared her most and showing them they had nothing to fear. Thought about unbinding forced oaths and giving people back their freedom to choose. Thought about proving, once and for all, that her power was a gift, not a curse. I'll need time to prepare, to understand which contracts are coerced and which are genuine. I can't just unbind everything. That would be chaos. I'll send scholars with you, legal experts who can help you identify which bindings are corrupt. Ronan pulled her close. You don't have to do this. If you want to stay here, let me handle Garrett through conventional means. No, this is the right move, the only move, really. She looked up at him. If I'm going to be queen someday, I need to prove I deserve it. Need to show the kingdom that I'm not just the woman who saved the king, I'm someone who can help save them all. You're already that person, you just need to let them see it. She left for the eastern provinces 3 days later with an escort of 50 guards, 2 legal scholars, a physician, and Marcus, who'd volunteered to lead the security detail. You don't have to do this, Elira told him as they rode out of the capital. This could be dangerous. Lady Voss, with respect, I've spent 3 years watching you be poisoned and blamed for it. I'm not about to let you walk into a hostile province without backup. Marcus's expression was set, determined. Besides, my daughters need to see that sometimes you fight for what's right, even when it's hard. This seems like a good lesson. They traveled for 5 days, the landscape shifting from cultivated farmland to rougher territory as they approached Lord Garrett's holdings. The people in the villages they passed through were wary, suspicious. Word of Elira's magic had spread, and magic was feared out here in the provinces more than in the capital. But she stopped at each village anyway, set up in the town square and let the legal scholars announce that she was there to review binding contracts and free anyone who'd been coerced. At the first village, nobody came forward. They just stared, frightened and uncertain. At the second village, an old woman approached carefully. My husband, she said, her voice shaking. 20 years ago, Lord Garrett forced him into a contract, said if he didn't agree to work his land and give half the harvest to the provincial treasury, he'd seize our farm and throw us out. My husband signed because we had children to feed, but the contract was binding magic. Even after our children grew and left, even after we got too old to work the land properly, he couldn't break it, couldn't retire, couldn't sell. The magic kept him bound. Where is your husband now? Elira asked gently. He died last winter, worked himself to death trying to meet the quota. Tears ran down the woman's face. I'm still bound by the contract, still required to provide half the harvest, even though I can barely manage a quarter of what he could. Elira had the legal scholars examine the contract. It was exactly as the woman described, binding magic woven into an agreement made under duress. Coerced, not chosen. I can break this, Elira said. But once I do, you'll be free to make your own choice about the land. Free to sell, to retire, to renegotiate. Do you understand? The woman nodded, hopeful and terrified. Elira placed her hands on the contract and looked at it with her unbinding sight, saw the magic holding it together, the threads of compulsion and obligation. She pulled them apart carefully, thread by thread. The contract dissolved. The woman gasped, feeling the binding release. It's gone, she whispered. I can feel it. The weight. It's gone. Word spread fast after that. By the third village, People were waiting for them. Dozens of them, all carrying contracts they'd been forced into. Debt agreements that could never be repaid. Work obligations that lasted generations. Marriage contracts sealed with binding magic that trapped people in abusive situations. Elira worked from dawn to dusk, examining each contract, unbinding the ones that were coerced, explaining why she couldn't break the ones that were legitimate agreements made freely. It was exhausting. The magic drained her, but every face that lit up with relief, every person who thanked her with tears in their eyes, it was worth it. After a week, they reached Garrett's main holding, a fortified manor house that served as the provincial capital. Lord Garrett met them at the gates with 100 armed men. He was older than Elira expected, maybe 60, with steel-gray hair and a face like weathered stone. He looked at her with cold calculation. "Lady Voss," he said, not bothering with pleasantries, "you're not welcome here." "I'm acting under royal authority," she replied calmly. "I don't need to be welcome. I just need to do my job." "Your job is undermining the social order, breaking contracts that have held these lands together for generations." His eyes narrowed. "You think you're freeing people, but what you're actually doing is creating chaos. People need structure, need to know their obligations are binding. Without that, everything falls apart. Obligations made under duress aren't binding. They're slavery dressed up as duty. You're a naive child playing with power you don't understand. And you're a tyrant afraid of losing control." Elira stepped closer. "I've reviewed the contracts from your villages. I know what you've been doing, forcing people into agreements they can't refuse, using binding magic to keep them trapped, building your wealth on their suffering. That ends now. You have no authority here. I have the king's authority, and unless you want to commit treason by attacking a royal representative, you'll let me continue my work." Garrett's hand moved toward his sword. Marcus and the guards immediately shifted, ready to fight. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Garrett smiled, cold and knowing. "Fine. Do your work. Unbind whatever contracts you want. But when this province falls into chaos, when the crops fail because nobody knows who's responsible for what, when the infrastructure collapses because the bindings that held it together are gone, that's on you." He gestured to his men. "Let them pass." They rode through the gates into the provincial capital. It was larger than the villages, maybe 3,000 people living in a sprawling town built around Garrett's manor. The central square was already filled with people waiting, word having spread of Elira's arrival. She set up the same way she had in the villages. Legal scholars on one side, herself in the center, ready to examine contracts and break bindings. The first person to approach was a young man, maybe 25, carrying a work contract. "My father signed this when I was 10, he said. "Agreed to provide labor to Lord Garrett's mines in exchange for keeping our house. But he died in a cave-in 5 years ago, and the contract transferred to me. I've been working the mines ever since, even though I hate it, even though it's killing me the same way it killed him. I want to be a carpenter, want to learn a trade. But the binding won't let me." Elira examined the contract, saw the magic woven through it, the compulsion that kept him trapped. She broke it. The young man staggered, feeling the release. Then he laughed, bright and free and full of hope. "I can leave," he said wonderingly. "I can actually leave." "You can choose," Elira corrected. "That's what this is about, giving you back the power to choose your own life." She worked through the afternoon, breaking binding after binding, debt contracts, work obligations, even a few marriage agreements made under duress. But she also turned people away. A merchant who wanted his legitimate business contract broken because he'd made a bad deal. A farmer who wanted to escape debt he had taken on willingly and simply regretted. A woman who wanted out of a marriage that was difficult but not abusive. "I'm not here to let people escape consequences," Elira explained each time. "I'm here to free people from obligations they never truly agreed to. There's a difference." By evening, word had spread through the entire province. People were celebrating in the streets. The young man from the mines was already apprenticing himself to a carpenter. The old contracts that had kept people trapped for generations were dissolving, and Lord Garrett's power base was crumbling. He came to see her that night at the inn where she was staying. "You've destroyed everything I built," he said without preamble. "I've freed people you enslaved. That's not the same thing." Those contracts were necessary. They created stability, structure, certainty. Now you've thrown it all into chaos and you think you've done something noble. He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. Do you know what happens next? Half those people will make terrible decisions, take on debt they can't manage, enter into agreements that hurt them, and then they'll blame you for giving them freedom they couldn't handle. Maybe. Or maybe they'll surprise you. Maybe they'll build something better than what you forced on them. You're gambling with their lives. No, I'm giving them back the power to gamble with their own lives. That's what freedom is. Garrett stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, bitter and defeated. You really believe that, don't you? That freedom is worth the risk of failure. I do. Because the alternative is slavery, and nobody thrives in chains, no matter how comfortable you make them. He left without another word. The next morning, Marcus woke her with urgent news. Lord Garrett has fled, left in the middle of the night with his personal guard and whatever wealth he could carry. He looked both relieved and worried. The province is effectively leaderless. Elira dressed quickly and went to the town square, found it filled with people, all of them looking lost, uncertain. What do we do now? Someone called out. Who's in charge? Elira climbed onto the platform where she'd been breaking contracts, looked out at the crowd. You are, she said simply. You're in charge of your own lives, your own futures, your own choices. But who governs the province? Who collects taxes, maintains the roads, settles disputes? You decide. Together. Choose representatives you trust, create a council, build something new. She paused. The king will send advisors to help with the transition. We'll make sure you have support. But the structure, the leadership, that's up to you now. That's what real freedom looks like. What if we fail? A woman asked. What if we choose wrong? Then you learn from it and choose better next time. That's how people grow, how communities grow. Elira met the woman's eyes. I can't promise this will be easy. Can't promise you won't make mistakes. But I can promise you'll never be trapped by someone else's choices again. Your failures will be yours, but so will your successes. The crowd was silent, processing. Then someone started clapping. Then more. Then the whole square erupted in applause and cheering. They understood. Finally, they understood what she was offering. Not control, not domination, not even safety. Just choice. Just freedom. Just the chance to build their own futures. Elira stayed in the eastern provinces for another month, helping establish the transition. Other provinces that had backed Garrett's rebellion quickly reversed course once they saw what was actually happening. Not chaos and destruction, but liberation and renewal. By the time she returned to the capital, the entire Eastern Territory had reorganized itself into a coalition of self-governing communities, loosely allied under the crown but managing their own affairs. It was messy, imperfect. Some communities struggled, some made mistakes, but they were their mistakes to make. And the kingdom was watching. Ronan met her at the city gates, and the relief on his face was almost painful. You did it, he said, pulling her close. You actually did it. We're not done yet. There are other provinces, other lords holding people with corrupted contracts, and we'll deal with them, together. But right now, you need to see something. He led her through the city. It was different from when she'd left, brighter somehow, more alive. People in the street stopped to stare as she passed, but not with suspicion anymore, with recognition, respect. They reached the palace to find the entire court assembled in the throne room. Councillor Marin stepped forward, holding a document. Lady Elira Voss, she said formally, in recognition of your service to the kingdom, your courage in the face of conspiracy, and your dedication to justice and freedom, we, the High Council, with unanimous support, present this decree. She unrolled the document. It was covered in signatures, seals, official markings. You are hereby granted full authority as royal unbinder, with the power to review and dissolve corrupted contracts throughout the kingdom. You are given a seat on the High Council, and, she paused, smiling, you are recognized as rightful queen consort, with all privileges and responsibilities thereof. The room erupted in applause. Elira stood frozen, overwhelmed. This was real. They were actually accepting her, not just tolerating her presence, but embracing it, giving her power and position and recognition. There's one more thing, Ronan said quietly beside her. He took her hand, leading her to the throne. I have a question I've been waiting to ask. He knelt. The room went silent. Elira Voss, you saved my life. You saved this kingdom. You've proven yourself brave, intelligent, powerful, and compassionate. You've shown us all what real strength looks like. He smiled up at her. Will you complete the bond with me? Not because of duty or politics or obligation, but because we choose each other freely. Will you be my queen? Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Yes, she said simply. Yes. The ceremony was held a week later in the same throne room where she'd once knelt in disgrace. But this time she walked down the aisle in white and gold, her head high, while 5,000 people cheered. This time she stood beside Ronan as an equal, choosing him as freely as he chose her. The bond completed naturally, without curse or corruption. She felt it settle into place, warm and right and permanent. When the priest announced them king and queen, the crowd's roar shook the rafters. Elira looked out at the assembled people, nobles and common folk alike, all of them witnessing this moment. She'd been the barren queen once, the woman who stepped aside, the failure. Now she was something else entirely. The celebration lasted 3 days. Music, dancing, feasting. People came from every province to participate, to see the woman who'd broken the curse and freed the eastern territories. On the third night, Elira and Ronan slipped away from the festivities, found their way to the same small tavern where they'd toasted survival weeks ago. To us, Ronan said, raising his cup. To freedom, Elira added. For everyone. They drank, and she realized something had shifted. The weight she'd carried for 3 years, the shame, the failure, the sense of being broken, it was gone, dissolved like the curse she'd shattered. What are you thinking? Ronan asked. I'm thinking about the woman who knelt in that throne room and believed she deserved nothing, who thought stepping aside was the only way to protect the kingdom. She met his eyes. And I'm thinking about how wrong she was, how wrong they all were about what I could become. They underestimated you. Everyone did, even me. She set down her cup. But not anymore. Now they know. Now everyone knows that the woman they tried to erase is the same woman who saved them all. What will you do with that knowledge, with that power? Change everything. She smiled. Review every binding contract in the kingdom. Free everyone trapped by coercion and corruption. Rebuild the legal system so forced oaths can't be used as weapons. Create a kingdom where freedom is protected, not just promised. That's going to make you a lot of enemies. Good. Let them be enemies. I'm done trying to be acceptable to people who would rather I didn't exist. Ronan laughed, pulling her close. That's my queen. They returned to the palace as dawn broke, found Counselor Marin waiting with urgent news. The southern provinces have petitioned for your services, she said, looking both pleased and overwhelmed. They've heard what you did in the east. They want you to review their contracts, free their people from corrupt bindings. How many provinces? 6, with more requesting visits daily. Marin smiled. You've started something, Your Majesty, a revolution in how we think about power and obligation. Then we'd better prepare for a long campaign, Elira said. Because I'm not stopping until every corrupted binding in this kingdom is dissolved. The work took years. Elira traveled from province to province, examining contracts, freeing people from coerced obligations, teaching others with unbinding gifts how to use their power responsibly. It was exhausting, dangerous work. Some lords fought back. Some tried to have her killed. But she kept going, kept pushing, kept demanding better from a system that had accepted corruption as normal. Ronan governed alongside her, reforming laws, restructuring the council, building a kingdom based on choice rather than compulsion. And slowly, steadily, things changed. The first generation of children born after the reforms grew up never knowing a world where binding contracts could be forced, where oaths could trap you against your will, where power was something imposed rather than earned. They grew up free. 18 months after the bonding ceremony, Elira stood in her private chambers and stared at her reflection in disbelief. The physician had just confirmed what she'd suspected for weeks. She was pregnant. After 3 years of being told she was barren, after poisoning that should have made conception impossible, after everything, her body had healed enough to carry life. She told Ronan that evening in the gardens. He stood frozen for a long moment, just staring at her. Then he grabbed her and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We did it," he said. "We survived. We won. And now we build something new," she finished. "A kingdom where our child grows up free, where everyone grows up free. You really think we can do that?" "I know we can, because we already started." The baby came 8 months later, a girl with Ronan's dark hair and Elira's determined expression. They named her Lisara, after the ancient word for freedom. Elira held her daughter in the same throne room where she'd once been condemned and felt the circle complete itself. She'd gone from disgrace to power, from broken to healer, from the woman who stepped aside to the queen who refused to let anyone be pushed aside again. "What do you want for her?" Ronan asked, looking down at their daughter. "Everything we didn't have. Freedom to choose her own path, power over her own life. A kingdom that values her for who she is, not what she can produce or who she can serve." Elira touched Lysara's tiny hand. "And I want her to never have to kneel before anyone who doesn't deserve her respect. She'll be lucky to have you as a mother. She'll be lucky to have us both, and to grow up in a kingdom we tore apart and rebuilt better." Years later, when Lysara was old enough to understand, Elira told her the story. Not the sanitized version, not the tale they told in the history books. The real story, with all its pain and fear and desperate gambles. "You were poisoned for 3 years?" Lysara asked, horrified. "I was, and I believed I deserved it, believed I was broken." Elira stroked her daughter's hair. "But I learned something important through all of that. You're not defined by what people do to you. You're defined by what you choose to do next." "What did you choose?" "To fight back, to save your father, to break every curse and binding that kept people trapped." She met her daughter's eyes, "and to make sure you never have to make the same choice, that you grow up in a world where freedom is protected, where power is earned, where nobody can force you into a role you didn't choose." "Is that why you travel so much? Why you're always reviewing contracts and breaking bindings?" "That's exactly why. Because every person I free is someone who gets to build their own future, someone who gets to choose." She smiled. "And someday, if you want, you can help with that work. Your gift is awakening. I can feel it. You have the power to unbind, just like me." "What if I don't want to? What if I want to do something else?" "Then you do something else. That's the whole point, sweetheart. You get to choose. Always." Lysara hugged her tight, and Elira felt the weight of everything she'd fought for settle into place. This was why. This moment, this child, this freedom to choose. This was what they'd won. 20 years after the conspiracy fell, Elira stood before a crowd of 50,000 in the Capitol Square. She was older now, graying at the temples, lines around her eyes from years of hard work and harder choices. But she stood straight and strong beside Ronan as they dedicated the memorial of the broken bonds, a monument to everyone who'd been freed from corrupted contracts, everyone who'd suffered under forced oaths, everyone who'd fought for the right to choose their own lives. The names were carved into the stone, thousands of them. A reminder of what the kingdom had been and what it had become. "We gather today," Elira said, her voice carrying across the crowd, "not just to remember the past, but to commit to the future, to promise that we will never again accept binding magic used as a weapon, that we will never again tolerate power that traps instead of serves, that we will protect the freedom to choose even when that choice is difficult." The crowd roared their approval. "I was told I was barren," she continued. "I was told I was cursed, broken, worthless. I was poisoned, discarded, condemned, and for a long time I believed them, believed I deserved nothing better." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But I learned something important. The only power anyone has over you is the power you give them. The moment you take it back, the moment you choose yourself, choose truth, choose freedom, everything changes." She looked out at the crowd, seeing faces young and old, noble and common, all of them living in the kingdom she and Ronan had rebuilt. "So this monument isn't just for the past, it's for the future. For every person who will stand here and remember that freedom is worth fighting for, that choice is worth protecting, that no binding is stronger than the will of people who refuse to be enslaved. The applause was deafening. That night, back in the palace, Elira and Ronan sat together in their private chambers. Lysara was grown now, 20 years old, already traveling the provinces and doing her own unbinding work. The kingdom was stable, prosperous, free. They'd won, completely and permanently. No regrets? Ronan asked quietly. About what? Any of it. The pain, the poison, the trials. If you could go back and avoid all of it, I wouldn't. She turned to face him. Because avoiding the pain would mean avoiding the growth, would mean staying the woman who knelt and accepted disgrace, would mean never discovering my power, never saving you, never building this kingdom into what it is now. Even the worst parts? Especially the worst parts, because those are what taught me who I really am, what I'm capable of, what I'll fight for. She took his hand. I was the barren queen once, the woman who stepped aside, the failure. And now? Now I'm the woman who rewrote the rules, who tore down a corrupt system and built something better, who proved that love and freedom are stronger than curses and control. She smiled. Now I'm exactly who I was always meant to be. Which is? Someone who refuses to be erased, someone who fights for people who can't fight for themselves, someone who believes everyone deserves the freedom to choose their own destiny. She looked out the window at the city spread below them, at the kingdom they'd saved and rebuilt, at the future they'd made possible. I'm a queen, she said simply. Not because I was born to it or married into it, but because I earned it every day, every choice, every battle. Ronan pulled her close, and they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge over the kingdom they ruled. The woman who'd once knelt in disgrace now sat on a throne she'd carved from the rubble of a broken system. The woman who'd been told she was worthless now protected the freedom of millions. The woman who'd been poisoned for 3 years to suppress her power now used that power to free everyone else. She'd gone from exile to power, from shame to glory, from nothing to everything. And she'd done it by refusing to accept the lies they'd told her about who she was supposed to be, by choosing instead to become who she actually was. Powerful, dangerous, free, and absolutely, utterly unstoppable. The end of her disgrace had been just the beginning of her reign, and the kingdom would never be the same.